Hey everybody, No Man here. I am currently getting set up for my the Ogryn stream, and I'm a big dummy when it comes to uh, getting set up for streams, so I am just currently getting things set up and ready to go. And how many people we got right now? 1 second. How many people we got? We got one watching at the moment. Nobody's really here. I got no viewers according to this. Huh. My thing is lying to me because clearly Postal Shaggy's here. I'm going to give it a little bit of time. Oh, okay. We got people. We got 3 viewers. Grave Boiler is here. Like I said, I am. Lorgar was right. Lorgar. He's right, but like not in a way that's useful. Pretty sure Lorgar did everything wrong. Got Ghost 21 GP chanting for Og. There will be Og. Don't you worry about Og. He will happen. Just give me 1 second. Let me get this a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to give some more people a chance to get in here. Okay, we have 7 viewers now. I'm going to give a little bit more of a chance for people to come in. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through the first Og the Ogryn series, and I'm going to give my commentary. My plan is to kind of go through things slowly. Is go through each one of these videos and have the sound on fairly low, so that way I can talk over it and I don't have both things going on. And if I don't have anything to say about a certain part, I can like turn the volume back up. We're gonna see how this works. Good morning, Attrition. Welcome. I'm accustomed to a few more people than this, so hopefully we'll be able to get started in a little bit. But yeah, I'm going to talk about like my writing process, things that were going on in my head. There are going to be some Og things that I'm going to skip. There are some shorts and stuff that I don't think are super relevant. I like did a couple things that are part of the playlist, but they're not part of the saga. Eric Rayner is here. Hey, Eric. And the Unwanted Warrior. Hello, No Man. Your videos are awesome. Hope you have a nice day. Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. Okay, we have 12 viewers, which is beginning to get in the ballpark of what we usually have. I think the most I've ever had in a stream was we had 76 people in the stream, and that was reacting to if the Emperor had a text-to-speech ending. So there was a lot of people who weren't normally part of my stream that were involved. John Smith is here, as well as Commander Baneblade. Alright, I think we got 15 people. I think we now have an appreciable amount lined up and ready to go. Let me get Og going. So if you guys have issues with the sound or like want Og to be louder, just let me know. I have it at about a little bit less than half volume. If it doesn't work, you know. Oh yes, Eric Rayner. For those of you who don't know, he is the artist who made the thumbnail. So you can thank him. Heap praises upon his name. Join his YouTube channel. He does have some No Man related content in there, and you can see more of his artwork. So giving him a big shout out. Og is a proper Humie. He's an ab Humie. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started, and we're going to start at the very beginning. Let me just double check, make sure I have this. Okay, I do have, this is the playlist. I'm on the playlist. This isn't just going to, like, go to the next thing. I also have ads on because I didn't want to change every single one of the things in the playlist. Anyways, here we go. So,
come on, Og. The Emperor needs you to get into the Crassus transport.
So this was originally a Reddit post of all things. I was posting on, I think it's Wholesome 40K, and I made the prayer, and then I took that prayer that I wrote down, modified it slightly, and then used it for here. And this was a huge success. This is the first video that I've ever had go viral, become super popular, get lots of comments. It's already at about 500,000 views. It had a couple different times where it spiked, which is pretty cool. Yeah, not too much. Basically, once I did this and had all the success that I had, that was what kind of sparked, well, I have ideas for doing like an Ogryn story. I was also inspired by Bob and Gav, or Gav and Bob, whichever. I'll let the prayer go.
Chaos and Xenos foe, so we may expand and always grow. He rules above with us beneath, so follow orders and brush your teeth. The Emperor wants what's best for you, so eat your rations and grow strong, it's true. 1, 2, 1, 2, a marching tune. We go to face the foe. We give them shells and lasgun rounds and send them running to and fro. The Emperor always guides us, he wants us to attack. For just as he protects us all, we must protect him back.
Okay, so that is the original thing of all of it. Og the Ogryn origin. Oop. I do have ads on here, so I'm gonna mute that. Got a question. So, hey, no man, just want to know, are you gonna do this story on Greenbelly after the Gitslaya escape? I have no plans on doing the Greenbelly story. That's one of those things where I have encouraged other people to, like, if you really like things in my story, I encourage other people to also write stuff. So if you want to write Greenbelly's story, you're certainly welcome to. But there's a bunch of different characters whose stories kind of split off and do their own thing, and I don't think I'm going to pick them back up. But other people can. So that is my current theory for that. So anyways, this one, I'm going to turn this down. This one is kind of following up on the popularity of the first Og the Ogryn. And this was kind of before I figured out what I wanted to do for the story. So, but I didn't have a name for. Yeah, this is where I came up with Gallus's name. And I also didn't have a notion of who the bad guy was going to be, which is why the orcs are mentioned in this one. But I had already started other stories about orcs, so I wanted to have a different bad guy for Og the Ogryn when I actually started the story. So I ended up changing it from this one. This is also the only video where I have drawn the the thumbnail myself, and that is kind of. I don't have awful art skills, but I'm not great. Yeah, this was just me drawing on paint, and it was really relaxing because I didn't have to make it good because it's an Ogryn who's drawing it. I just got to, like, I don't have to make the blade look good. I don't have to spend a lot of time on things. I just have to make it look enough like it's the thing that it's supposed to be. Oh, the question remains, did he go into the transport after the prayer? I've debated, like, I have an answer. Like, I know what happened, but, I don't know if I want to reveal it or if I want the mystery to continue.
what to do. I got
Let me ponder it. I may reveal whether or not he got into the transport at some point.
Oh, yay, oh, they're dumb and stinky, and I'm gonna bash their skulls in with my friends. Bye.
Yeah, this was also one of the first ones where I am getting a feel for Og's personality, and the way he's going to be, because he changes a little bit from this too. He matured. He's kind of like a big baby in this one, and he does. I mean, he's a kind of a large child in some ways, but when I actually got down to what I wanted to do, I was very. This was kind of one of my most planned out. This is one of the most planned out videos that I ever had, or like the whole series was the most planned out.
Soldiers of the Imperial Guard.
This is also before I had gotten my mic. There's a while in this series before I have my nicer mic, which bugs me a little bit, but it is what it is.
You have all passed, but some of you exceed mere
Let's see what.
expectations.
So when I decided on Gallus's character, I definitely drew on my own experience working in childcare. I was a camp counselor at a summer camp, and I've done some education stuff as well. I worked at a museum. We had groups of kids coming in, so I am relatively familiar with how to deal with kids, and I've also worked a bit with special needs kids, or kids that are difficult, kids that need a lot of attention or like paying attention. You just need to pay attention to them and like, you know. So I was kind of using my experience with that with the character of Gallus, of like Gallus understands the nature of Ogryns. He understands what their abilities are. Excuse me.
The other guardsmen smiled as they went about their morning duties.
Sorry, I just caught a funny thing went down the wrong pipe.
It was amusing to the guardsmen.
I will survive.
Helped the childlike Ogryn learn patience.
But yeah, that was definitely a line right there with like teaching the Ogryns how to stand still and pay attention. That is like a thing that's very difficult to get kids to do. But like Gallus, when I've dealt with kids, one of the things I always believe is that kids are capable of way more than a lot of people give them credit for. So I kind of wanted that to be central to Gallus's character, of he really believes in the Ogryns, and he is going to try to be like this sort of father figure, a teacher, and he cares about them, but he also understands that they're soldiers, which is sort of the disconnect from being a mentor, father figure, but also being a military commander. Oh my goodness, I can't have my throat messing me up this early.
They eat things the Emperor loves. And now they are trying.
I also took a little bit of time to decide which enemy I wanted to deal with. I wanted to do Tyranids. I hadn't done anything with them, but at this point in my channel, so I wanted to make them the central bad guys. Tyranids are really good as bad guys when the story isn't going to revolve around the villain. They're not great villains because they're just a hive mind. So if you want to focus on the heroes and the difficulties of war, Tyranids work really well for that, because they're a big nasty obstacle with a lot of different kinds of critters that they can run across, a lot of different challenges, a lot of different crazy bioforms.
More cheers of approval. Look at the pictures when you're on the big ship. Remember what the bad bugs look like.
I'll pause in between the videos and respond to people's things.
Not lose their pictures of the bad bugs and still has them tomorrow.
Excuse me. Oh my goodness.
Will receive the Emperor's star. Follow Bonehead Biff to the boom pile.
I also really like Bonehead Biff in the series. Like, he is kind of the character that Og grows up into being by the time we get to the end of the series. But yeah, having Tyrannid as the bad guys really let me focus on Gallus and Fletcher and Biff and Og and just the different people that everyone runs across. I don't have to have the villain monologue or have people invested in what the bad guy's doing. The bad guy just needs to be a threat, and it needs to be brutal. Yeah, if you guys have we have 15 viewers right now. Make sure you're liking the stream, and also, yeah. So I'm gonna let me read some of what chat's saying. Doodly doo. Do I do all the voices? Yep, I do all the voices. I prefer the flip Og convincing the commissar to get in. Yep, that's coming up. That one was odd. I thought it was funny. Oddly enough, in Special Needs and what you portrayed was very kind and understanding. I appreciate that. A couple people have said that. Have some hot tea with honey and be nice to your pipes. I didn't do anything mean to my pipes. It's just I was talking and like something went down the wrong tube. All right. Another minor thing. I'll do that during this ad, but basically I am working on trying to save it for a nicer mic for streaming. This one was very silly. I'm going to skip past this one. Oop, darn it. No. I'm trying to hit pause, and the pause button is like, when you go to the next thing, the back button disappears and then reappears, and like it moves around, so you accidentally keep clicking on things. But I am currently working on getting a better mic for streaming, because the mic that I use for recording is a different hookup than the one that I use for this. This is hooked up to my camera, so it is very much it isn't very good. I want to save up money for a streaming mic, so if I don't want to use video and I'm just talking, I would like to use that. Good gravy. This is awful. Yeah, so any donations that are done today are going towards new mic. So no pressure. If you can't donate, that's okay. And as I said, I'm going to read super chats in between episodes. But let's go ahead and get started here.
Once more, Ogryn. Reload.
This was another bit where I wanted to explore like what it actually would involve when it would involve for training Ogryns.
Loading your empty back into your gun. Remember.
Now that was
Full mag heavy, empty mag light.
that was actually something that someone had told me from their time in the infantry that people would do is they weren't be careful about where they would set their empty magazines, and they would end up picking up empty ones by mistake. But I wanted to portray what it would be like for Ogryns to be trained, and I also wanted to depict a more accurate level of intelligence for the Ogryn. I talked about this at one point where I was just discussing like Ogryn intelligence levels of what it would require for them to actually be effective in combat, because they're kind of described as like being really, 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 really stupid, and to the point of at which it's like I'm questioning whether these guys can like dress themselves or like take care of their weapons or know how to reload or operate like something that's complicated. So they have to have a fair amount of intelligence to be able to be instructed and learn these things. They don't have to be super smart, but so I prefer to show them as a little dim rather than like really, really incapably stupid, or like their cognitive abilities would just be so low as described in the lore that it doesn't make sense that they're any kind of they can't function on the battlefield if their cognition is as low as described. Um,
But for now, it's time to eat. Put your ripper guns
let's see.
pile in the barracks. Bone
Yeah, and it was just kind of fun for me to like figure out what the system would be to train Ogryns and like how a commissar might rely on a bonehead to kind of be the same way you have a non-commissioned officer communicating with the commanding officer, kind of the link between the men and the higher command. I also wanted to show like what motivates Og, because I kind of skipped over it, but it's but him wanting to do a good job. That's like Og's big thing. It's like he believes in the Emperor, he wants to be good, he wants to do good, and he's very ambitious for an Ogryn. Whereas I think a lot of Ogryns kind of will do what they're told. And oh, this is one of my favorite speeches. Is Gallus talking to Fletcher.
I'd do if I had to lead men who couldn't follow more than one command at a time. Why do you say that? No, simply because I don't have your patience. No, why do you say that Ogryns can't follow more than one command at a time? Gallus, that's common knowledge. You can't tell an Ogryn to attack a hill and then hold it. It'll become confused and likely to fly into a rage. That's Scholar Progenium first-year stuff. A shame your knowledge of Ogryns hasn't progressed past your first year of instruction. Tell me, Fletcher, what is this? Gallus pulls an object from his coat that's about the size of a fist. Fletcher looks confused. That would be a frag grenade. Good, you're still passing first year. How does one use such a device? Fletcher frowned. One removes the cap, pulls the pin, and throws the frag grenade at the target. My word, Fletcher! Excellent! Well done! Now, if you knew your second-year studies, you would know that these grenades are standard issue for Ogryn. Tell me then, Fletcher, how could an Ogryn possibly utilize these mind-bendingly complicated devices that require not 2, but 3 entire steps to utilize? Fletcher grinned, though his amusement had certainly faded.
So,
you're very protective of them. Ogryns are incredibly valuable assets, if their officers bother to train them properly. Ogryns are obedient and loyal as Canids like Brutus here. Brutus heard his name and smiled as he looked up at Gallus. If I trained Brutus here poorly and gave him a command, he wouldn't understand a thing I told him. Officers who get frustrated when Ogryns can't take and hold a hill probably never explain to their charges what it means to take something, or what it means to hold it, and maybe not even what a hill is. Ogryns are like children. When they're badly behaved, you blame the parents. Commissar Gallus pushed past...
Alright, so that, yeah, I like that. That's kind of I really like that. I didn't want to talk over it. It's one of my favorite parts that I wrote. And I really like that people kind of saw parallels between Fletcher and some of the instructors that they would have in special education. That a lot of people just don't have good expectations, either for kids or for people who require special needs education sort of things. And I really enjoyed that because it really expressed kind of what my own feelings towards just people in general. I think that there's a lot of low expectations for people. Yeah, I very much enjoyed that. It also puts a nice, it sets up some things for later on in the series. I think my throat's finally a little bit better.
Don't worry, little Molet. Ogryn let nothing bad happen to you. The Imperial Guard is gonna smash all the bad bugs.
Little did Og know the truly endless numbers of bad bugs that drifted through the void of space, drawing ever closer to Molech.
It was one of the funny things about Molech being the planet was it was kind of an accident because I was looking for planets that were close to the current Hive Fleet, which I think is Leviathan, but I think Leviathan might have been destroyed. I think Leviathan might have been destroyed, but I actually chose Molech because there was a place near the most recent Hive Fleet that was called Moloch, and I was like, oh, that one, I'll look that up. And I ended up trying to find information out on Moloch, and ended up looking up Molech by mistake. So the entire location of where this thing takes place is entirely accidental. And the weird thing about Molech is we only know about it from basically the time of the rise of the Emperor through to the Horus Heresy, and we don't know what else has happened. We don't know what happened there. It's like there was a big fight, and it was, you know, important, and a lot of the Imperial Knights turned to chaos, and a bunch of things got destroyed. But we don't know what happened since then, and I don't know what. I don't know what else happened, and I didn't want to change the planet too much because they didn't have anything on what has happened there in the past 10,000 years.
Maul beasts and flesh titans of Meropia, and now.
Yeah, I also had fun making up branding stuff.
War and his proud noble pilot Talios.
I liked Makai and Talios. They were nice, and it was a good chance to kind of highlight knights and like what their deal is.
And the pilot felt disgust as the legendary
Blah 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 blah. Well said, Adam Apple. Blah blah. Hey No Man, do you have any people who have come to you wanting to record stuff for their projects recently? No. Nobody has been like, hey, can you do voices? My email for contact, if you are interested in me doing stuff for you, you can contact me through my email, which is on my channel. You can, I think it's under About Me or something, or you can find my email, but I'm going to put it down in here 1 second. What the heck? I have to sign in the chat? What's going on? Alright, 1 second. I'm going to...
The fortresses and cities that dotted the landscape would make use of them somehow.
It's not letting me sign into... I get what's going on. It's being difficult.
Was to deny Hive Fleet Kraken the vast reservoirs of biomass that live.
Yeah, it was interesting to kind of focus on what the Knight's motivation is.
Progress in all sectors. I know the Knights don't like doing peasant work, but this plan would be impossible without their help.
It was kind of interesting to like try to plan like what would the preparation for a Tyranid invasion be, and one of the things you probably want to do is just get rid of as much biomass as you can. So like if you have just these big jungles, you don't want to let them just eat all of that and set like their digestion pools and everything. It would just be a giant mess. Yeah, Eric, can you post my email? For some reason it's being difficult, and I don't want to, because right now I have this open in the chat, open up in Streamlabs, and I can chat if I was logged into YouTube. If I was looking at the stream from YouTube, but it's being difficult. Yeah, go ahead and post my thing. Yeah, it was also kind of fun to put together the force that would be opposing this kind of splinter fleet. I think it's like I got the Inquisition in there, I got Lamenters in there, I have the Astra Militarum involved.
No, it was not. By day's end, the jungles had been reduced to tempting little banquets of biomass. The men were exhausted from the day's work. Even the Ogryns had burned off much of their raucous energy. Og's natural...
Pardon me. How did I learn to do so many voices? It's just something I've been doing. I've never been trained to do it. Starting at age 10, I started doing voices. The first, I basically did scenes from, one of the first voices I could do was Pumbaa and Timon from The Lion King. So I used to basically entertain my family and my friends by doing those voices. And it was one of the first times where there's like a difference when you're a kid and like you do something that makes people laugh, or you like try to do something to impress your family. It was one of the first times where I was able to get like attention for something that I was actually good at. And since then I have been doing voices on and off for my own amusement. It's just practice. You just learn how to manipulate your voice to do different sounds. But yeah, my email is noman40k@gmail.com. So if you wanna throw me some monies and pay me to do funny voices for you, I certainly can.
The Imperial Navy made contact with Hive Fleet Kraken last night. They have since been making a fighting retreat back to Molech. We simply don't have the numbers.
Can I still do Pumbaa? I can't really do Pumbaa anymore. I need to like hear the voices. It's been so long since I've seen that movie. I also just kind of messed up my throat. I bet I could. I think I could do Timon. I don't think it would be all that hard.
We all die here. There's no retreat. We should have contact with the enemy today. You all know your assignments. Execute your duty with honor. The Emperor protects. The assembled officers echoed Colonel Braddock and began filing out.
Good old Colonel Braddock, a character I forgot existed. I gotta say, I think the Ogryn is one of my best. Is probably the thing that I'm most proud of, because I also will go back and listen to parts of it, and I'm like, oh, I wrote that. Man, I can write well if I like, yeah, have a really good idea and have time to do it.
All of the Imperial units would be dedicated to blunting the initial attack. If they could prevent the planet's defenses from being overrun immediately, then they stood a fighting chance.
This was one of the things I wanted to do as part of Og the Ogryn that I wanted to do over Bob and Gav, is I wanted to give the impression of the entire, I wanted to give a sense of the entire campaign. You know, so you're getting like a nice personal, a personal kind of story, but you're also getting the sense of what's going on. Because if you're just a grunt and you're only seeing it from the point of view of Og, it would just be, I go over here and I fight things, and I go over here and I fight things, and I like giving the impression of like what's happening and what's trying to be accomplished at different places.
Ogryns. The enemies of the Emperor are
How do I forget a character? I wrote this, you know, over a year ago, and Colonel Braddock is not a major character. I don't listen to this all that often.
The honor and the glory to be on the front line.
That's one of the things that I don't think people realize, is that creators don't necessarily know, have everything that they've written memorized. I sort of make it, and it kind of goes off and exists, and I don't, you know.
When we take our last breath, when our lifeblood leaves our body in service to him, then we will be with him for all eternity, continuing to fight his enemies wherever they may be. Come, vile Xenos, feel the Emperor's wrath, for his servants are here, and we will make Molech your grave.
That's an okay speech. I didn't know really what to do with. It's like, I gotta have a cool guy's speech. It's the start of the fight. Pardon me, I'm eating.
I can feel it getting stronger.
Fie on you, ads. Oh. I mean...
Orb looked up at the Tyranid swarm as it entered the planet's atmosphere.
Okay. So this is the big sad.
Undulated and moved as one, like a massive murmuration of starlings.
I have to say,
Possible school of fish.
I have to say that one of the difficult things that I have writing is writing combat scenes, because there's a lot of things that happen, and you have to make everything jive together for it to be interesting. You have to have characters that are trying to accomplish things. You have to use the combat scene to express certain things about, like, their character growth. You also have to create a realistic scenario where you can visualize, like, the ebb and flow of what's happening.
The Tyranids were no neoplasms. They were guided by an intelligence that directed them as one. If that intelligence was willingly sending its swarm into a trap,
But yeah, anyways, this was it's something that whenever I do combat, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of energy, and it's very difficult.
the Hydra tanks and fixed flak guns opened fire into the plummeting swarm. Plumes of black smoke burst in the sky as shells
When it came to writing this particular,
that screamed through the sky.
I knew what I wanted to do pretty early on from this fight. I didn't want to have a fight with the Tyranids where important things didn't happen. You don't get to fight Tyranids and not take casualties.
Spore after spore was shredded to pieces by the concentrated fire.
So I like the way this progresses, because it kind of is able to establish the Tyranids as a threat. The feeling of trying to fight something off while being threatened to be overrun.
The swarm seemed to shudder as it swelled and gathered, as it began to inexorably push through the fire of the defenders.
Pardon me, I'm eating my lunch.
Spores came into range, las fire erupted from the fortified.
Let me finish this and get some. I need to drink something.
Still they came on. Makai of House Paius, the venerable Imperial Knight, began to fire his plasma decimator, turning spore after spore to ash. Og and the Ogrins watched Makai in amazement. If something as big and powerful as this knight worked for the Emperor, they reasoned that the Emperor must be even greater and larger than this war.
I always liked using the sense of bigness being very important to Ogrins. The bigger something is, the more important it is. It's a little bit of a thing I borrowed from orcs.
The men of the Astara Triangle continued to focus fire on the relentless rain of spores. They needed to thin the ranks of these creatures, or they would surely be overrun. Gallus could see the Ogrins getting excited as the battle was about to begin in earnest. He needed to buy a little time before he could unleash.
One of the things that you don't want to do. Yeah, combat is chaos. Like, being in combat. I've never been in combat. Not in anything that's like real. I've done like paintball, and I've done some LARP stuff where you get into the fight, and it's very difficult, even in like this pretend way where your life isn't on the line. It's very confusing as to what's happening. But when you're telling a story, you need to make sure that what's happening is clear. What is happening is clear to the audience. I like this picture. It looks cool.
All manner of munitions sprayed from the bioweapons of the Gaunts, but they were having little effect on the fortified positions. A few men fell screaming to the ground as flesh-eating worms bored into their flesh, or they watched in
There's a couple of flesh-eating worms bored into their flesh. That's one of my biggest problems with writing, is I will repeat words. It is one of the things that I still will write things and then go back and look to edit it, and I'll still find that I repeat words when I'm describing things.
As they continued to push forward, their claws crushing the corpses of the fallen Xenos underfoot. Mackay and his pilot Helios were champing at the bit for a proper fight. His mighty chainsword Androcles hungered for new prey. He marched forward, firing.
Yeah, I had a lot of, like, Mackay was one of the characters that I just... There's a lot of characters in this story that are not the main focus, but I like doing the little details on characters kind of in the background. So just let them do something cool, or give them like a little bit of personality, or like when they do things, put some thought into like who they are and why they do things, because it makes your stories feel rich. It makes your stories feel, it makes your worlds feel populated. That even people that you interact with just briefly. Oh, get that out of there.
Now, Ogrins, charge! Crush the bad bugs!
Crush the bad bugs! Crush the bad bugs! Crush the bad bugs!
Og and the others charged out from their trench and surged towards the Cadians, who were putting up a dogged defense of Fort Alki. But they would soon be overrun, even with the tremendous firepower of Mackay. The Tyranids reached the trench before the Ogrins and Ormagons and Genzeos were cutting their way through the men. Fletcher sliced through the midsection of one of the Gaunts before putting a bolt round through the head of another. A Tyranid warrior leapt on top of the Commissar, a clawed foot scraping across his carapace breastplate. Fletcher struggled to bring his bolt pistol to bear, but his arms were pinned. Just as the warrior was about to unload its death spitter into the unfortunate officer, Og body-checked the monstrosity as he leapt into the trench.
This is another moment that people talk a lot about, is Og kind of football tackling or rugby tackling the warrior. All right, got 10 from Finlander. I've really enjoyed all your Og content. Just wanted to tell you that. Keep up the good work. Thank you very much, Finlander. It is easily the most popular story that I have, and I think it is one of the best things I've written. There are definitely other stuff that I've written that I'm proud of, but I'm glad that the thing that's most popular on my channel is also one of the things that I think just genuinely is one of my best things that I've made.
There's too many to miss.
Gallus and the Ogrins quickly cleared the trench, and the Ogrins began to push the line back.
So I assume everyone who's here knows the story, but when it comes to the end of this story, when it comes to Gallus being wounded and taken away, my original intent was to kill him here, and I left it. I didn't explicitly say that he died here, but I heavily implied it, that he wasn't, and then he wasn't going to come back, and it was just Fletcher would be the leader. But I considered what I wanted to do with that, and I did think that Gallus coming back would be like really exciting, and it's like a really good emotional beat for when he comes back later, when they're doing I forget what the oh, okay, good gravy. I don't want this. Sorry, I also have ads in the middle of these things. But when it gets to be later on, I forget I forget the title of the big fight. No, I don't want to do that. The big fight in front of the city where Fletcher later dies. I wanted Gallus's return to be like the light of hope. It is a little bit of the Gandalf thing of he's back right in the nick of time to, but it is. The battle is almost like emotionally exhausting, but the reveal of the Custodes being there and Gallus also being there is like a really nice moment. I think in some ways, Gallus just dying and having Fletcher be the commissar from then on out would make for some better character development. It would be a little bit more conflict because once Gallus is back, there's less struggle within the group. But I don't regret it. Like I don't think that I made a mistake. Yep. There he is.
For the Emperor! Knowing his strength would not last at the rate he was losing blood, Gallus took his chainsword and sliced at the feet of the Carnifex, the teeth of the blade digging deep into its foot. Og jammed the bayonet of his ripper gun into the neck of the creature, causing it to scream in pain and pull away, the ripper gun still stuck in its neck. Og began to pummel the creature with his huge fists, cracking more of the chitin around its head as it began to ooze.
Chitin. Probably should have said chitin. I think you can call it either way, but. But yeah, I don't regret not really killing Gallus. I thought it created a nice moment. It a little bit cheapens his death right here because a lot of people really impacted that. But I also like that he comes back. It was a tough decision, but I'm not unhappy with the decision I made. I don't go back and be like, could I have done it the other way? Yeah, I could have just had him stay dead. But my own personal feeling when I had the big battle where Fletcher dies, I felt like exhausted after that. And I wanted to kind of have the story have something happen that like lifted you a little bit.
Even though they defeated a great enemy, there just seemed to be more and more enemies.
Everyone loves robot legs.
Never ended. At that moment.
How's Og doing? Og is currently he's currently on Polis, dealing with an uprising. A mysterious uprising. It's another one. I like to.
The sons of the Emperor surged forward in gleaming ceramite and bathed the battlefield in holy bolt of fire. Mackay surged forward. His ion shield had fallen, but his durable.
I have a bad habit of using the word surged a lot, but that's okay. I would also say that this is another moment which I really liked, which is but this is another moment where I liked having the Lamenters show up. Oh boy.
Fletcher was leaning over Gallus, trying to stop the blood flow as he tried to get a medic into the trench. Gallus was very pale, and his arms hung limply at his side, though he was still clutching his chainsword and his bolt pistol.
Commissar?
Well done, Og. You made the Emperor very happy today. Gallus winced as Fletcher used his belt as a tourniquet to stop the bleeding. He removed Gallus's belt as well and tried to do the same thing on the other leg. But the blood loss was just too much.
I did? I made him happy? I did a good job?
Yes, Og. I think I'll be going to see the Emperor myself soon.
You go into the Emperor's house?
Most likely. I lost quite a bit of blood. Eventually, we all go to see the Emperor, if our faith is strong. Gallus's head slowly leaned back as the Cadian medic arrived in the trench and began trying to treat Gallus. Og backed away as the men with the medicine worked on his friend. They put him on a stretcher, draped a white cloth over him, and took him away. Og's big eyes began to water as they took his friend away. A big hand clapped Og on the shoulder.
Come on. The battle's not over yet. We still got bugs to smash. Plus, ain't you ever wanted to meet a space marine?
So, yeah. That's one of the big popular ones. This video, I just wanted Gallus's fake death to go all the way through. Stupid ads. But yeah. And I liked that Gallus is at least out of it for a while. And then there has to be, Fletcher has to step up and really kind of make and has to learn how to do something that's very difficult. He's going to have to work with a group that he really doesn't want to, and I think that was a good opportunity for that.
Fell in line with the other Ogryns as Bonehead Biff gave the order to move out. Og spared a final look back in the direction that the medicine people had taken Commissar Gallus before turning his attention to the retreating Tyranid force in front of him. The Emperor still had work for him to do, with the Lamenters reinforcing them.
So, this episode is mostly introducing the Lamenters. We're introducing Sergeant Lazarus, getting a feeling for him, and we're also getting the arrogance of the knights, of that you're seeing how arrogant they are because they want to do this thing where they're hunting. They go on their hunt and kill the Tyranids. But it's just but it's sort of you're required to do these things that aren't necessarily the most militarily viable because as much as the Imperium's not super united. The different factions don't coordinate super well. They have different power struggles, and I tried to represent that with the way the knights kind of work.
And provide heavy fire support. The Imperial Knight Mackay and his pilot Talios thinned the ranks of Tyranids before Biff's Ogryns and Commissar Fletcher's Cadians.
I actually forgot that there was a little bit there was a bit of a fight before the Tyranids actually retreated into the jungle.
Og marched with the line, firing his ripper gun whenever he saw the bad bugs stirring in the clouds of smoke that spread across the battlefield. Whenever he could, he would steal a look over at the Space Marines as they fought. Their shots always seemed to find their mark as they tore through rank upon rank.
It was actually kind of hard to find. It was actually kind of hard to find a lot of art of the Lamenters when I made this. I think there's more fan art of them now. But this was a weird low-res picture that I found. I really wish I had better. I wish I had better audio for this. Something that I'm waiting for until we can get to the episodes where I have my mic. Which I think is episode 9 or something. I actually get my mic.
I am Talios,
pilot of the venerable knight Mackay, wielder of the mighty chainsword Androcles, we have burned and despoiled our land, destroyed our vast hunting grounds, and we have done so in the Emperor's name. But we demand our right to a final hunt. These Xenos shall become the quarry that has been denied to us. If
Hey, little ones.
we will consider you our quarry.
Hey, you, get out of
We
here.
don't have time for
No,
this.
no, get out of
We
here.
cannot risk losing any knights in the
How do
race
I-
for glory, while other points on the planet were unable
I
to
got a
evade
spam
the
bot.
Xenos.
Hold on.
They need to be destroyed as quickly as possible.
I'm gonna pause this and deal with the spam bot because I can't do it through my. Hold on. I'm gonna go deal with the stupid spam bot. Where's the spam bot? I'm not seeing it on here. Oh, there it is. So this is. How do I remove? How do I? This is. Okay, I think the bot. I think I dealt with the bot. All right. If it I mean, I'm just gonna make sure it is done making noise. If it keeps making noise, I will deal with it.
And then we must move. Lives are on the line. Human lives are unbearably brief. You know this better than most, Commander. It is a legend that lives beyond mortality.
I made it if I have bots.
You will write our
I've had
names,
bots post on my
or you will not
my
have
videos
the
plenty of
support
times.
the
I just delete them.
The guard and the space marines watch.
I wish YouTube was better about filtering them out. They do the same things. I figured that YouTube would be able to get rid of them if they wanted to.
The captain swore beneath his breath as the sounds of the last great hunt began.
Oh, come on.
2 scores of knights entered the forest. It was unclear how many would return. The
Hold on,
actions
how do
of
I-
the knights forced the hands of the other commanders, who needed to decide how many troops needed to remain until the knights either finished their hunt or were all destroyed. This
Okay.
tyranid force could not be allowed to remain.
That should be
As
it.
the commanders sorted out their orders and made necessary preparations for their current situation, the Lamenters were preparing to move as well.
All right, that should be enough. That
Ships
should be
began
good.
to
It should be
arrive
blocked
to
now.
collect Space Marines and recover their
I
property.
reported it. I put it in
Those
time.
who had no
I figure if you
command
report somebody,
wasn't
they'll.
quite sure what to do with
I don't know
his
what's going on.
commanders. He decided that everyone should line up and dig a trench. He always liked digging trenches. Many of the Ogrins did not have their entrenching tools with them, and simply used their powerful
All right,
hands
so there
to
we
dig
go.
in the earth. One of the Lamenters, a Primaris by the look of him, saw the Ogrins at work and looked around.
So people have complained about the Primaris as being a dumb idea. And I was like, well, why do I... It was one of the things that I wanted to do with the Lamenters, was make them Primaris, because it allows them to have more guys. Like, the Lamenters, I think, they were in the midst of their penitent crusade, because they weren't at the devastation of Baal. They're one of the few that weren't there when the Blood Angels all got massacred, because they were still doing their own thing. They were down to like 100 or 200 guys in their entire chapter. So one of the things that I think makes sense is sorry, I'm getting distracted by the audio. I'll give if somebody. Let's see. Eric, you can be a moderator. I trust Eric. So not distracted by this kind of thing. But I definitely wanted to use the Lamenters and utilize the Primaris because it would be a good way for them to fill up their chapter, and they'd be at actual fighting strength. And I thought this was a good story to give the Lamenters a win. They would win, but at great sacrifice, as is the Lamenter way.
Emperor's blessings upon you all. I am sorry for your loss.
With that, Og and the other Ogryn began the trek back to the fort's redeployment as the great hunt in the jungle continued. Sergeant Lazarus Soul followed, counting...
Anyway, sorry, I'm switching back and forth between this.
Og continued to watch the sergeant as they marched.
Okay, there we go. That should be okay.
And he was awfully strong for a little.
This is my early Patreon thing, which is pretty not great looking. I am not a sophisticated person who does fancy things with graphics. My current editing software is super duper simple, and I don't have a whole lot of like graphic design stuff. All right, so this is kind of where I'm able to do. This is kind of where I'm able to start doing some interesting things character-wise with Fletcher.
The casualty reports from the Astara Triangle, Lord Commissar. What a feffing waste. 14 nights lost.
So one of the things that happened is that I used the word feffing,
Last hunt.
and it's like, oh my goodness, is this guy from Tanith? Is this this one dude from Tanith? Holy cow! And I was like, oh, I thought Feth, like I knew that it was from Gaunt's Ghost. I did read the first. I read a little bit of Gaunt's Ghost, and I remember the word Feth, and I didn't realize that Feth was not just like the Warhammer 40k word to use to get around censorship. I didn't mean to imply anything, but why not?
But what they sent was little more than a diversionary force. We're trying to redeploy them as quickly as possible.
This guy is like the head commissar. He's the Lord Commissar that's running the commissariat in this, because there's all these different groups that run stuff. Because the commissariat is separate from the Astra Militarum. The command structure of the Astra Militarum is different, and the commissars can kind of take over different units whenever they kind of feel like it. But yeah, that's who this guy is.
Nearly a full company of Lamenters and 32 guard regiments lost. The only good news is that the bulwarks were all able to detonate their incendiary bombs once the Xenos had breached the defenses, denying them much of the biomass they sought to absorb. Well, the lines are drawn. Now the real war begins.
That was another thing that I wanted. Like I said, this is more of the thing I wanted to get across was the scale of the conflict, and if you actually look at the map of Molech, all of these things that I mentioned, all of the places are all like real places on Molech. The different names of the continents, what's all there.
Must be some kind of mistake. The orders I received were for the 25th Chimera Auxilia. I'm assigned to the Cadian 1500 Navy. Yes, you've been reassigned. To Gallus's old unit. Yes. The commissariat feels that your talents would be better utilized if you were to take command of the 25th. But sir, Cadians don't need you, Fletcher. They're one of the most decorated and disciplined units in the entire defense force. You were assigned to them because Colonel Parker died in the Malthus campaign. You were chosen to act as interim commander, and with the promotion of Captain Metellus for the initiative he showed in repelling the Xenos orders from the venerable Knight Nakai, you are now free to be put where we need you most. But I've never worked with Ogryn. I will do as you're ordered in the name of the Emperor. Fletcher, you have a talent for getting the most out of traditionally poor soldiers. You are always ambitious, and you jumped at the opportunity for your first command, though many would not have chosen.
What you did with the Corpuscan 75th Penal Regiment in the reclamation of Magnus Fundus was quite impressive.
I like making up names for things.
Thank you, sir. I expect similar results.
Magnus Fundus, is, if you know Latin, is really dumb because it's supposed to be an ag world. If you know Magnus Fundus, it is literally just means big food.
Every night the Ogryn got to dig trenches when the army set up camp.
Well, I'm commenting over this stuff. I mean, I can turn this up, but then I can't hear myself think.
That was scary. Og wasn't sure what was wrong because he didn't feel happy digging his trench.
So, regarding
Lubus,
the Lubus, why do I always leave my stories on a cliffhanger? You hate me, LOL. Because it makes people want to watch the next thing, and then they're really exciting once they have the series finished. People will want to keep, keep listening. That's why you have cliffhangers. Because it's interesting.
How come?
That's just the way it is.
I like this bit. I enjoy having Og kind of come to grips with death. This is a nice, everyone has to come to grips with death, and someone like an Ogryn might not always understand what that is.
Yarp. Og felt a little better.
We should all fight and do the best we can, so that then we can.
Yeah, I
all go
like
to the
having Og
Emperor's
with this
house.
kind of boundless
And
optimism.
we can see Gallus again.
Fletcher took a deep breath as he watched his charges work. He was going to have some big shoes to fill.
Yeah, if you ever want to take a look at the Latin I use and things, the Latin I use is really stupid. It's really, really, really stupid. Or it's not super clever. Like in the second iteration of Og the Ogryn, Polis it's one of the names that was used for Constantinople, and it just means city.
The Xenos have concentrated their forces on the continent of Molochari. Unfortunately, they broke the containment fortifications of the Molochari bulwarks, and they have been working to isolate the continent further by infesting the surrounding ocean.
That was one of the things I actually thought of, was just like,
heavily fortified and
what would be a terrible thing to have happen? It's like, well, if Tyranid bioforms got into the ocean, because you're never going to get them out.
That most of the defenders
they will then, even if you wipe out all of the
however, more and more survivors,
the synapse creatures, you're still going to have
capital city of Molech.
As far as we can, you're still going to have giant monsters living in your oceans forever. Because boy oh boy, can bioforms get big if they're in the water.
These Xenos have destroyed and absorbed more valuable assets before assaulting the strongest points. We suspect there's something in Lupercalia they want, though it's unclear what they could be after. Lupercalia holds many secrets of the ancient night house.
Yeah, I tried Lupercalia.
To support them as soon as
again,
possible.
that was another
First,
decision I had to make
Citadel.
because I don't know what's changed about Molech in 10,000 years, because there's no information about what's happened on this planet since
all of the assembled officers
since the
gave
Horus
sign of
Heresy.
Attila and departed.
So is there still a
Sergeant
city called
Lazarus
Lupercalia
remained
there?
behind to
And
speak
why
with
would
Lord
that make?
General.
And why would it still be called
Fletcher could
Lupercalia?
not hear them as they began speaking in hushed tones.
I don't know. It's just one of those things that
Grabbed
I had
his
this
data
weird
slate
idea that it's like I'm
and
not
headed back
going to change
to the
Molech
barracks.
unless I have
Commissar
like
Fletcher knew they wouldn't
official
be in
word
Fort
on
Leosta for
what
very
is
long,
different about it.
but they needed to resupply.
I was kind of
Fletcher was
very
grateful he didn't have to
worried
deal with
about
loading and
people
unloading the Ogryn's every
being
time they
really
set up camp. No matter how many times
gung
these
ho
creatures
on
got
lore
into
and
chimeras,
stuff.
they never seemed
Like
to get used to it.
I'm very
Only
nervous
their
about like
bonehead managed to
using
consistently keep calm.
like using the wrong
Marcus
name
was
for
waiting for Fletcher
weapons.
as he emerged from the
I'm
briefing.
nervous about like
It's you. Are
not
you following me
being
around
true to
Do I have to take
a
care
certain
of
faction's
everything
principles.
Gallus
I
left
want to
behind?
portray things
Brutus flattened his ears
as
and
correctly
looked
in
frightened.
lore as possible.
Oh, come on,
Um,
you big baby.
With like a couple of
Brutus
exceptions, like
happily
I
trotted
did,
after
I
Fletcher
have
as he moved to
changed
old
the
storage
way
areas that
Ogryn's
had been
work a
converted
little
into
bit
Ogryn barracks.
to make them a little bit
According to
brighter
his data
than
slate,
they are
His
technically
Ogrins
in
were going
lore.
to be provided with 3 las cannons to improve their
But I don't
protection
think I think it would be
against
hard to
high-value
write a
targets.
believable story if
He needed to
Ogrins were
select
as
Ogrins who would be able
dim
to
as
handle
they're
a weapon that
portrayed
they needed
in
to
the
reload
actual
every single
lore.
time they fired it. He would likely give one to the bonehead and then figure out the rest. Speaking of which, Bonehead Biff was waiting outside of the barracks. Fletcher
The
regarded
Latin
him
I
with
use is
some
100% lore friendly. I mean, Ferrus
Is there
Manus.
something you need, Bonehead?
I think Corvus Corax is the one I think is funniest. Like Ferrus Manus is like a
Aren't you
thing.
supposed to be
Corvus
watching the other
Corax is
Ogrins? They
literally
don't get into trouble.
Raven.
I told them to
I mean,
get
it's the
barracks
scientific name
and
for
get ready inspection.
for ravens.
That usually keeps them busy for a while so we can talk.
Fletcher was still feeling
Moderator,
out the
do your
capabilities of
moderating.
Biff as he led him into the office.
If you please. Thank you.
Well, it appears the Xenos forces are concentrating their efforts on Lupercalia. We will be joining a relief force to raise the siege at Dawn Citadel. Then, once we meet up with elements of the Third Army, we'll march on Molochari and raise the siege
Yeah,
of
this is just
Lupercalia.
a lot of details about like
Biff nodded,
what
but said nothing.
what's actually happening. Because I like I said, I wanted this to be to give you a sense of what the way the campaign would work and trying to go after different assets and things.
Okay.
And I hope it does have the.
Report it now.
Good. Fletcher paused for a moment. Oh, there's something else. The Lord General, the big boss, he wants to give us 3 las cannons. Have you been trained?
I
to
also
fire
like the las cannon bit. Like it is a nice way of
Yup.
giving Og a challenge, like something that's hard for him to do. Like everyone else is worried about the fighting and dying.
Fletcher nodded with a
But
smile.
Og is gonna have this is like a challenge for Og, so I really like that.
So,
All right, I got
2 more Ogrins.
big
And
money
use
from
the
Crazy
las cannon.
Potato. Hey No Man,
Which ones
love
are
your
smart
videos.
enough
Kazazel's
and
Merry
patient
Marauders
enough
were
to
so
fire and
awesome. I
reload
joined their
and
crew.
aim
Not that I had a
carefully each
choice.
time.
Here's a little something from our
Biff
last
thought for a
raid.
moment.
Much appreciated, Crazy
Og
Potato.
and Gus, probably. They're both smart. They can learn fast.
Fletcher nodded. It took some time, but he and Biff eventually seemed to get on the same page. It would take some time to get used to this new command. These Ogrins responded well enough to standard Ogryn commands, but Gallus had taught them new, more complex commands that allowed the unit to be used more
Actually, do not
effectively.
recognize what the currency is
Fletcher
that
had
Crazy
to do the
Potato
legwork of
donated.
learning these new, unofficial commands through trial and error, as Biff had trouble rattling off every single command phrase. Fletcher was making progress with his new charges, but he did not.
Yeah,
have a
I
lot of
like
time
I like
before
the
they
whole
would
thing
do
of
combat.
Fletcher having to learn how to deal with Ogryn and
Gus.
being adaptive because I didn't want him to be
The
like
big boss has got
I didn't
his
want to hand off the
gun.
Ogrins to like an incompetent
Biff handed the 2
uh,
Ogrins the enormous
officer.
las cannons that usually
It's
took 2
it's something that's a
humans to
little
carry
odd
on
for
board.
commissars that you have
These
people
are
that go through this
different from
very
the
rigorous,
guns.
extreme training
One shot.
and just
reload.
make
One
a lot of
shot,
poor leadership
reload.
decisions. I mean, it
Understand.
happens in real life. You have bad
Og and
officers
Gus looked at each other.
who slip through the
They thought that
cracks.
was awfully
But
slow,
I
they
didn't
both
think that
shrugged.
was going to be as interesting as
I
like you
think
just
I
give the Ogrins to
Good.
a bad
We'll
commander.
be using these the next
um,
time we face the bad
No,
guys.
I think it's more interesting for
Tomorrow,
Fletcher to
we're
kind of
back
grow
on
and
the move.
learn.
A wave of groans ran through the Ogrins as the promise of more
Ah,
days
so-
in the transports did not appeal to them.
So that
Fletcher
is
was
check.
not exactly thrilled at them getting
Much
in
appreciated, Crazy
either,
Potato.
and he was not pleased by this response. Ogrins,
Oh no,
it is
they're-
your
they're
duty
giving
to
me
the Emperor
Corona.
to obey. Guardsmen
Lol.
across this planet are
Ha,
giving
ha,
their
ha, ha.
lives in his service.
haha.
The least you can do is do your duty without complaint. If I hear one more word of complaint... Fletcher paused for a moment, trying to think of something worse than getting into a chimera that he could threaten the Ogryn with as punishment. If I hear one more complaint, I will tell the Emperor. The Ogrins gasped, and a few tried to shush the others as the others tried to shush
I like
them
that
back.
joke. I think it's very funny.
Commissar
and very
Fletcher
sweet.
nodded in approval before leaving the barracks. But as he left, he shook his head and sighed. He felt like a fool threatening these imbeciles with the direct wrath of the Emperor himself. But it seemed to be effective. As he took a moment to
I also
collect
wanted
himself,
Fletcher's,
Og
like,
emerged from the Ogryn barracks
way
as well.
of trying to get the
Fletcher
Ogrins
raised
to do
an eyebrow
things
as the Ogryn
to be like more
Mr. Commissar Fletcher, sir.
rough and aggressive
I'm
than
Og. So,
than
um, I just wanted to
than
say
Gallus,
thank you
because
for letting me shoot the big gun.
Fletcher's first
I
command
know it's gonna be
was a
hard,
penal legion,
but I'm
and
gonna
like
try
that's
my
much more of
best
what he's used to
to
working
shoot
with, which are
and reload and shoot and
not
reload.
terribly bright criminals
shoot and
who
reload
are gonna
and shoot and reload.
who need a lot
It's
of
not like my normal job
who
with
aren't
the
going to be
Ripper gun,
motivated unless you are
but
threatening them
that's
and yelling at
kind
them.
of just like what you had to deal with. You're not normally Ogryn Commissar, but you got to.
This is also an
the
opportunity I
Emperor said
use to
so.
like show that Og
So,
is like
yeah.
observant and very
I'll
very
do
smart
the hard thing the Emperor
by Ogryn
wants.
standards.
Just like you, Mr. Commissar Fletcher, sir.
Fletcher could only nod at the odd piece of insight this simpleton managed to scratch together. The commissar quickly made a note to himself. Recommend Og to be considered for biochemical Ogryn neural enhancement.
Yeah, I also liked, it's a good way of having Og grow is that he's going to become a bonehead. It's one of the things that has been a little bit harder for me to deal with in later in the later stories is Og doesn't really have anywhere to go as far as like advancing. I'm gonna skip the New Year one. That's not. Oop, did I skip? What's this? Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm on. I didn't accidentally hit the wrong thing. So someone made a comment that Og sounded really old just then. My voices aren't always consistent. Like, I try to make them pretty consistent, but sometimes if I wake up and like I have a sore throat or, I don't know, I just might sound different for some reason that I don't know. So there's a little bit of variation in the voices, and I notice it a lot, and it bothers me, and it is just what it is. Alright, here we go. Let's keep going on the Mud March.
Dawn Citadel was a miserable slog. The vast
I kind of
majority
like the
of
Mud
forests
March
and jungles
because
of
it
Molech
was
had
a
been stripped
way.
away
I thought it was a
to
good way
return
of
its
like
biomass.
not
But with the rainy season
skipping
beginning, the
what
planet
travel's like
became
and what just. Sorry. And
an
what
enormous
what a
mud
long
pit.
march is going to be like
The army slowed to a crawl,
in the world.
but the need to reach Dawn Citadel was urgent.
But it isn't just
Every day
boring.
became
Like there's stuff
and
that goes
more
on here.
miserable.
Um,
All units were either outside on foot, or it was their shift to sleep while eating crammed into chimeras.
sorry.
Most of the guardsmen slept very little, except for veterans who had learned how to sleep anywhere. For the Ogrins,
Anyways,
things
so
were particularly
yeah,
bad.
this is
Even
a
with
thing that
Fletcher's
I
speech
ended
about
up being
disappointing the Empire,
somewhat proud of.
Og and his
I
fellows
also was
became
was
more
very
and more
frustrated when I
agitated
first
and were
posted
more
this
likely
because
to
this is
become
actually a
angry and
re-upload.
frustrated.
The
As Ogryn are
original
fully capable of
Og the
overturning
Ogryn and the
tank
Mud
in
March.
their
This is
rage, Fletcher allowed Bonehead
one of the
Biff
this is
bring
actually one of the
lunatic in the
first
Chimera
videos
with
where
him.
I'm using a mic,
Fletcher
and
turned to more traditional ways of encouraging his
my
charge
mic
to enter the
was
transport.
loose.
Generally,
When
some
I had it plugged in and I was
the minor
recording,
wrath of one of his officers would be assigned
and it
to
wasn't
lure
plugged
the
in all the
Ogryn
way,
into
so
the
there's a
Chimera
big
with
section
food.
of this
Once they were all inside, the unfortunate guardsmen would then be
video
trapped
where
with a motion-sick,
the
panicky Ogryn.
the audio was all messed up.
Fletcher's
It was
unit
like
a little
super
calmer
duper
than
loud
lunatic, but the
for part of it,
experience
and then it was
still
like
quite
really
intense.
quiet for another part of it.
However, one day,
Um,
everything went surprisingly smoothly, and the young guardsman assigned to Ogryn duty emerged
So,
without
yeah.
even a spatter of vomit on him. Commissar Fletcher promptly questioned him.
but
What did you do?
I wanted.
You
One of the other
find
things
some
is
corner
with
to
the Mud
hide
March
in?
is I wanted to
No, Commissar, sir. I remain
make
with Bonehead
note.
Biff
I wanted there to be consequences
And?
for
well, sir,
all of the
I told him the
forests
story
being
of
cut
Verissa
down.
Snowbore from my homeworld of
I wanted
Echo's
everything
Tree.
that's done in
My
this
granddad
story
used
to
to
like
tell it to me
matter
when I was
and
boy
mean
child.
something. So if
I
you cut
started
down
telling
all
the
of the
story,
forests to deny
and one by one they all
biomass to the
dropped off to
Tyranids,
sleep, sir.
well, and if
What
it's
is your name,
the whole
Guardsman?
place is a jungle, well, it's
Dillenberg,
going to
sir.
rain a lot, and it's just going to
Well,
be an enormous amount of
Dillenberg.
mud.
Anytime you would rather tell stories than march, you're welcome in our chimera. Spread the
So
word
I
to the
thought
other men of your
I
unit.
kind of liked that
I
idea.
want volunteers to keep my lads calm during this march. And I think some time out of the mud might do some good for you as well. Yes, sir. You speak.
And I like this little bit.
Have a word with
This
the
is
commander.
another little
Yes,
little
sir.
thing that I really liked. I liked the
The remainder
Ogryn
of the
story
journey was
time.
much more tolerable.
The
The Ogryns were a bit more calm, though
kind
traveling in the
of
transport
idea.
was
I
still
think
somewhat
it's good to
upsetting for them.
show
However, with the Emperor's Light, which was
Fletcher's
what they had come to call the
flexibility,
Lunar
like
Stick,
his willingness
and
to learn
stories
kind of
from
on the
guardsmen,
job.
they were able to get to sleep much more quickly. Fletcher's method of dealing with the transport challenge spread throughout the army, with overall morale improving as a result. Ogryn outbursts of anger were reduced, and guard morale was further improved when men and women had the option
But
of
part of
skipping a
the
marching
thing that
trip
was inspired,
by
like,
playing storytelling
you gotta
to an
keep the
Ogryn
Ogryns,
platoon.
like, happy,
Og,
is
Gus,
that
and Biff had the serious challenge of taking care of
is
their las cannons and all
if
this
you're
mud.
if you're in kind of a
They
bad
were not built
situation
for
and you
Ogryn
have
use.
like
Ripper guns were built to be
children with
nearly
you,
impossible
like
for
children
Ogryn to
don't
destroy.
respond well to
Las cannons were much more
bad
sensitive by
situations. They're
comparison.
generally impatient.
Not that
They
las
get frustrated.
cannons weren't
I
reliable
think that's going to be
battle-tested
something that
machines,
Ogrins have
but
to
they
deal with
couldn't
as
just
well.
be dropped in a mud
So,
pit and be expected
I
to
kind
work
of
without
like this
thorough
little
cleaning
moment of
afterwards.
you get some character stuff and you
Biff
also
had been
get
trained by Gallus on how to
some
load and fire
fun
las
Ogryn
cannons.
stuff, some sweet Ogryn
And
stuff.
Biff and Fletcher passed this information on to Gus and Og, who seemed to be getting the hang of things. Sergeant Lazarus and the attached Lamenter Company were used as advanced scouts to help the Astromilitarum units
I also-
avoid the worst of the mud.
Poor
But it was
Gus.
still slow going. The Tyranids seemed to be having difficulty moving through the mud as well. Even their burrowing bioforms seemed to get stuck in the morass. Fletcher
Yeah,
expected
it
them to
was a
adapt
thing that
sooner
I
or
actually
later,
considered that
but
mud
for
is
the
bad
moment,
for
the only
Tyranids too.
contact
It's
they
like you
had from the
can't
enemy
you
were
can't burrow
gargoyles
if
and other
it's all
flying
mud.
bioforms.
Everything you can't make these
The
huge
Army's
underground
Hydra tanks
tunnels.
seemed to be sufficient to drive them off with few
If it's all
casualties.
mud,
Og and Gus
everything just
took
collapses.
the opportunity to try out their las cannons, firing them into the cloud of wings and claws above them. The experience was frustrating. In the heat of battle, Og was accustomed to letting his battle rage take over, and he would unload his Ripper gun until he got into
This is
close
as loud
combat.
as this goes.
Then it was smash and bash until the fight was over. Now,
Let me see
he
if I
could
can.
only fire and reload. And with the swarm of gargoyles, he couldn't even tell if he was hitting.
That's as loud as I can make
The
it.
las cannon wasn't even designed to be a melee weapon. If he struck something with it, he would likely break it.
It was an issue with because this is one of the
The fight
first
was
times
over.
I was using my
Og
new
went over
mic
to Biff.
and I hadn't gotten
I
to the
don't like
correct.
this.
Og
I hadn't
was
gotten to the
doubly
correct,
irritated because of an acid burn on his shoulder.
This
how to
last
talk
cannon
into
is
it
stupid.
and get the
I
right.
hate it. I
right,
want to smash bad
volume level.
bugs, but I can't because it's stupid.
Biff put one hand on Og's shoulder.
I
firmly,
like this little bit
and
too
another on his
of Og
arm.
expressing his
He did not
frustration
want
and like
Og breaking the
not
las
always
cannon in
being good at
frustration.
things immediately.
That is the Emperor's gun, and it is not stupid. It's different, and it's hard.
Remembering that
Can I
this was
increase the
Emperor's
comment?
gun,
It's me
Og
me
stopped
talking.
his tantrum
I
and
can
relaxed.
move the mic closer to my face.
Oh,
Hold on.
sorry, Biff.
Is that better?
I did a bad job.
All right. See you, Ghost.
Looked back at the retreating swarm of gargoyles.
Is that better? Am I louder now?
No, you did fine. We won the fight, and you shot the gun like you were supposed to. And you didn't break. It's just not fun. Being in the guard isn't fun all the time.
And
Is
I also
everything
like
all
this
right,
because
Bonehead?
it gives
sir, calm
Bonehead
yourself, Fletcher,
Bonehead
sir.
Biff a chance to kind of shine
Og was
and do his
mad
thing.
because the gun is different, and he can't smash enemies now.
Og, do not hit enemies with the las cannon. It is
This is
very
also
bad.
a moment where
But
Fletcher kind of
Makes a
underestimates.
point. I should requisition some appropriate melee weapons for you.
I think
I'll give you
it's kind of
something to
both.
smash the bad bugs with.
Fletcher is not
But
used
do
to dealing
not
with Ogrins. He has a
smash
pretty
with the las
low
cannon.
understanding of Og. Of
Og
like, no,
relaxed.
don't smash anything
He
with
still
it.
felt shaky,
That would be bad.
and his face was red.
It's like, well, that wasn't the issue. Og
rejoined
knows
the
he's
rest
not
of the
supposed to
Ogrins,
smash things.
They
The issue is
continued
he doesn't
their
have anything to
seemingly
smash
endless
with.
march.
So it's kind of both
Fletcher was
an
able to
illustration of
acquire a few
Fletcher's
adamantium
is not
rods that
Gallus,
Ogrins
but it
could
also
use
is
to place
Fletcher
their
is
las cannons if they were forced into melee.
a flexible, able
Eventually,
commander, and
the
he
mud
can
ended,
adjust
and they began
and
climbing a mountain.
find solutions to problems.
Climbing was hard, but it was much easier than moving through the mud all the time. When the army reached the top, they could look down onto Dawn's citadel in the distance. The vast, ancient fortress was besieged.
Oop,
The cannons fired
knocked the thing.
again and again, and the void shield flickered under the Tyranid assault. Clouds of gargoyles filled the sky as massive
So we're getting
Paradin
close to the
biotitans
next
circled above on powerful thermal winds.
big fight.
A huge swarm gathered at the base of the fortress, full of every biological
One of the
terror
things
the
about
hive mind could throw at them.
Warhammer
The
40k
teeming mass
and
was
what
only broken up by the immense forms of biotitans
the way that
hurling their
everyone
deadly
fights,
salvos
everything
at
is
the
kind
Titans.
of
It was
World War
time
One,
to face the bad
pre-World War
bugs.
II, up through World War II, as far as what the tactics are. So I actually went through, and like learned a little bit about tactics for the next part, to find out like what a rolling barrage is and how it would work. And it's an old World War I tactic that I thought was kind of interesting. So I tried to make it work here.
Down from the mountain, across the valley filled with bad bugs of every shape and size. The normal
So
gods,
have I thought about how Og
little
will
ones,
turn out? How far ahead do
they
you
all
think?
got quiet. The prayer
I
men walked down the
have
columns,
the big
yelling stuff
story
about the
for the
Emperor
most
to make
recent-
everyone brave.
I know what's going
Og
to
wasn't
happen
scared
overall.
about the bad bugs.
Like I know who the Tin King
but
is.
he
I
was
know
worried
what's
about
ultimately
using
going to
his
happen.
new gun right.
The difficult
Fletcher
part for
told
me
Og,
is
Gus,
taking
and Biff
the big
that they would
outline
shoot
and
the
then
biggest bugs that were close
writing
by.
what happens. It's like
The rest
you make
of the
these points of
Ogryns
like
would
the things that you
protect
need
the
to
shiny
happen,
new guns
and then writing
and shoot
for
the
me is
little
like
bad
you're
bugs.
connecting these points
As Og
in an
marched
interesting
with
way
Gus
that
and
is
Biff,
also it's
he
like here are all the
noticed that
plot
bugs
things.
seemed to get
Now
bigger
make
and
character
bigger
things
as
happen
the army
and
drew
actions
closer
happen and
and
things that move the
closer.
plot forward.
The bad bugs that
and make
Og
interesting
fought
things
were
happen
the
until you
size
can
of the
get to
Carnifex they faced earlier,
the next
were
point.
much,
And I've been
much
having
larger.
a little bit of trouble with
Og still couldn't tell from
the
this
most
distance
recent
that these
Og
bad bugs were bigger than the knights that marched with them.
series.
The
Some of it isn't just
ancient
burnout.
machines
I'm doing a lot.
swung into
There's
battle,
doing a lot of
stepping
stuff
over
with school. I have a
crags
big
and
project
outcrops as
due.
if they were nothing. The
I'm
yellow
just
Space
shorter on
Marines were in
time
the
because
front,
of a number of
with
reasons.
some guardsmen that had no faces. The ones that always had the mask with the tube. They never talked to Og. They were always quiet and serious. Og
I
had
enjoyed
never
having the
seen such a big
Kriegers
battle.
show up in this one.
Seeing the huge numbers of tanks and knights and guards and space marines, Og felt like the Emperor's friends were strong. But when he looked over at the horde that blanketed
One of the things
valley,
I like about
it wasn't
this
exactly fear
series
he felt,
is I shift.
but for the
Someone at one
first
point,
time in his
I
life,
shift perspectives.
Og felt
Someone actually
small
asked me
looking at the
why
massive swarm
why don't I have
that
a
seemed to
consistent
go on
narrator?
forever.
Like the narrator
Even
should
though there
always
was
be
still a
omniscient,
long
not
march to reach the bad
omnipresent,
bugs,
and like know
the
everything,
big
and
booms
or
started.
you stick to
The tanks
a
and
point
knights
of view.
began to shoot the big
And
guns.
I kind of
Things
want to. I
quickly
kind of
became too
shift based
confusing
on
for Og to tell what was happening.
whose
The
perspective I'm
Tyranids
looking at
began
things
to
through.
fire back
If
with their
Og,
own
if we're in
strange
Og's
big
talk,
guns.
if Og is thinking or doing
Acid
things,
cannons,
the
clouds
narration
of
is
boring
more likely
insects,
going to be from Og's
blasts of
perspective.
bioplasma fired back.
If
Og
it
could
is
hear the
somebody else,
screams,
then
but
we might
Fletcher
go to
kept
an
the
omniscient
Ogryn from
sort
being
of
distracted.
narration,
Eyes forward,
or we might
lads.
have a
The
narration
enemies
that
of
kind
the
of
Emperor
reflects
lie
the
before
thoughts
us,
of
not behind.
the people we're talking about.
Og focused on the wall of enemies moving towards them. Along with the big booms, the guns that went chugga 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 and rat-a-tat-tat started up too. Lines of automatic fire ripped through the rocky plain, sending shards of rock everywhere until they reached the enemy lines.
There we go again.
And
Rocky
then the
plain
bad
and rock.
bugs were spattered into a fine mist of chitin and ichor. The bad bugs were shooting now too. Some screamed when they were hit. Others tried to stay brave.
It's very challenging for
Og
me to
never
keep
heard the lamenters or the
battles
Kriegers scream.
sounding interesting.
The bad bugs never seemed
And I know
to
it's
scream
something
in
that
pain.
like people
The
really
battles seemed to
want and
fade
they really
out as
like is
Og
they want
focused on
really
his
cool
job.
badass
He
battles.
took every bit of attention he could muster, but he
Like
did
I
not
said,
want to fail
writing
the Emperor
battles for
again
me
like
is
he did against the
exhausting.
flying ones.
The thing that's very
Ogrys were
easy for
tall
me to
enough that
write
they
is
could fire their
dialogue.
las
You give me
cannons
two people
over the head of the
talking.
Kriegers.
Like I love
Biff
writing two
pointed out
people
a
talking.
towering
That's my
shape
favorite
in
thing
the
to do in
line.
the world.
Got one.
Battle,
Og and the other
it's not like I
Ogrys
don't
fired
like
their
doing
las
it,
cannons into a
but it's
carnifex
very,
that
very
tried to
challenging.
reach
And
the
I've said it
front lines.
before, but
Two of the blasts
it is
missed, but one
it is the
struck
hardest
hard.
thing for me to write.
Og remembered this kind of bad bug was really tough, but one blast from the las cannon and one of the beast's scything limbs was disintegrated in the superheated energy beam. A few rockets from heavy weapons teams focused the carnifex. It took a great deal of punishment, but eventually it collapsed.
This also, I think,
However,
overall is a
that
good.
was only
The
the
way the
first
battles
big
happen,
bug.
it's a nice
More were
escalation.
shoving their way forward.
This is the biggest
The knights
battle in the whole
acted as heavy
story.
fire support and focused on
Even the
driving
battle
line
at the
back,
the finale
breaking the lines
is a
of
different thing.
Tyranids
It's not a
again
huge
and
field
again
battle.
and again.
And that was something I wanted
The
to
men
do
and knights
with.
were slowly backing
I
up
have
to
three
the
main
mountain,
battles. One
where
is
rocky
the Astora
ground provided
Triangle.
more
One is the
cover
battle at
and
Dawn
could help
Citadel, and then
break
there's
up
the finale
assault of the Tyranids.
with the assault on
The
Lupercalia.
attention of
And
the
I wanted
swarm
each and
seemed
every
to be
one
turning on
of the
arriving
battles
army.
to feel different.
Reload, shoot, reload, shoot. Now Og could see the power of the Emperor.
And the other thing that's happening is
Whenever
I'm
the
using
big
all of
bad
this stuff
bug
to
stepped forward,
all of the
he,
battles to also
Gus,
show
and
character
Biff
advancement.
focused their fire.
Og is now
Didn't
learning
matter
more about how to
big
use
the
the
bad bugs were.
use the
Emperor's
las
gun
cannon and get better at
blasted
it
them away.
and learn
was at
more
this
and understand
That Makai,
more of what his place is going to
the
be.
ancient and venerable knight, stepped forward with his plasma cannon and chain sword Androcles.
Also,
and
I
began
enjoy.
firing
This is
blasts
I
into the
enjoy
ranks of the
Makai.
enemies
I
with the power
like
of
him
a
being
sun.
a little bit of a bit
With
player.
the firepower of the ancient
getting a
knight,
cool
the Imperial
moment,
forces were able to hold back the tide
and then going out like a
of the
badass.
advancing Tyranids,
Which is always fun.
tearing through them
Everyone
with
wants to go out
shot
like a
and shell.
badass.
As
And
the
it's one of those
line
things where
held,
I've tried to
a
do
dark
stories where it's just
shadow
like
fell over Og and the assembled army. The
where
sound of powerful wind
people
beats
just
filled
die,
the air
where
wind
you have like
gales
named
threatened to
characters
knock the
and
guardsmen from their feet.
nothing dramatic
A
happens. It's
Harridan
just they got hit.
Biotitan had descended
He
with
got
his
this
brood
guy
of
got
gargoyles
shot.
To break
They're in
the
the
guardsmen.
trench. They're aiming,
The
and
back lines with
there
all
was
the
a stray
firepower
bullet,
they
and this
could
guy just
muster
died.
turned their guns to the sky.
but it's just hard to.
Makai
It's like
roared
hard
his
to
challenge to the Xenos foe.
take to kind of.
I have been a protector of this land long before your
It's kind of difficult to like
appeared.
not
You will be but one more glory
make death an
added to
event in my
name.
head.
Androcles screamed to life, its blades whirring as Makai fired his plasma cannon into the belly of the beast as it sent swarms of gargoyles chittering into the ranks of the Imperial forces. The beast let
yeah,
out a
I enjoy
roar as
the-
it circled
the
around
Makai's
and dove at the
moment
venerable
here.
knight.
Um,
Makai towered over the battlefield, standing 12 meters tall. But he was dwarfed by the great Biotitan that streaked towards him.
yeah, Biotitans
30
are fun.
meters
Like
long,
it's
with
kind of a
wingspan
neat way
that
to
stretched
escalate
over
stuff.
40 meters.
Um,
Makai braced himself to receive the charge. He swung Androcles, biting deep into the side of the creature and raking along its belly, spilling great gouts of ichor across the battlefield. The tremendous Biotitan plowed
And
into
somebody
Makai,
discussed whether,
knocking the ancient knight from his feet and dragging him through
ichor
the formations of
was
men
pronounced
behind him.
Ichor
The
or
great beast gave an
Ichor.
unearthly keen
And the answer is
cry
you can pronounce it
as
both
it
ways.
tore through
Ichor
Makai's
or
plasma
Ichor
cannon
is
arm.
also fine.
Shoot, Og!
Somebody said
shoot!
Ichor. There have been people who said Ichor, and I think
Reload. Shoot.
that might
Reload.
be correct.
Shoot! Reload!
Og and the other ogres
But I
fired
think
their
that one's
las
also
cannons
correct.
into the
I just don't like
Biotitan.
Ichor.
Each blast
Ichor
added to the
sounds
creature's
weird
many
to me.
wounds. Og
Sounds less
had never
dramatical.
seen a living creature that was this huge before. The enormous thing beat its leathery wings, which were now pocked with scorch marks and blast points. It seized Mackay around the waist with its enormous jaws and lifted the powerful.
Yes, there was a comment that was that. Well, there was some confusion because because Mackay has three names. He has Telios as his pilot, Mackay is the knight, and Androcles is the sword. So I don't blame anybody for being confused as to what this guy's actual name is.
Shaking the knight this way and that like it was a rag doll. Mackay pressed
that, like, I wanted to get across, I didn't want to dive a whole lot into Mackay, but I wanted to sort of represent that Telios, Mackay, that they're all, the bond between them, like, Mackay is more of, like, what the whole thing is. Mackay is Telios and the physical might kind of bonded. Like, that's, and Telios is more like a piece of the Titan, or the, not Titan, the Knight, rather than, and almost like Androcles is part of the Knight. But it's the whole that's much more
with
important.
Androcles still embedded in its skull. Og did not understand, but he had just watched the death of one of the guardians of Molech that had stood for thousands of years. Thus ended
There's a couple
the
people
life
who
of Mackay,
were like appreciative
Duke
of
of
like
Astara,
how freaking
and most
old
venerable
Mackay
knight
was.
of the
It's like,
realm.
yeah, he's really, really old.
the
He's
struggle
very,
was
very
ended.
old.
But for the Imperial forces,
He's fought for a
the
long,
battle
long
was
time.
only beginning.
It's kind of, again, why I wanted to drive home Mackay is really important over over Telios as a character. Get rid of these ads for you guys.
Emperor wants you to get.
Oh, this is this one. This is very silly. Sure, I'll use this as an intermission.
Too small and too scary, and it makes my tummy feel funny.
I just thought this was
Ogryn
silly.
sighed as he
There's
tried
nothing else
coax
for me
the
to say about
commissar
this.
Inside the armored carrier.
You want to shoot the Emperor's enemies, don't you?
Yes, of course.
And you want to follow the Emperor's
And I think this is
orders,
an actual
don't you?
ogre with a nobbler that has been
And get in the crashes.
edited,
No.
that has been
It is too
modded.
small and too scary.
Commissar, stop being a big baby and get in the crashes.
Put me down.
Alright,
I don't
see you,
want to
Grave
go.
Boiler.
In we go.
Stop it. Put me down. Put me down. Stop.
I'm the best leader.
I just think, I didn't want to skip that. That was funny. It's very silly, and it does like break up like some of the most dramatic
Death of
stuff.
Mackay and the destruction of the great Herodin Bio-Titan. The Imperial Relief Forces.
Oh, I did. This is the wrong
and
number.
Citadel found themselves in a stalemate.
I know it isn't.
The Tyranids couldn't
Huh.
dislodge the Emperor's servants from their defensive position in the mountains, but neither could the humans push forward into the sea of chitin and claws. Not that the Kriegsmen didn't want to try. Their commissars prevented them from advancing, much to their chagrin. The smaller Tyranids could scale the craggy mountainside fairly easily.
Yeah.
The larger bioforms lacked the room to maneuver.
I think this is where I introduced the rolling barrage.
Wall of guns created by the remaining knights, space marines.
It's also a little
and
quiet,
guardsmen.
but I can't make it any
Og
louder.
continued to fire his las gun at the larger bioform.
Converted. Yeah, thank you.
Fletcher
Converted
managed
was the
to
word
get
I was
hold
looking
of a
for.
tech priest in the back lines. So
One
a
second, I'm
crew
moving my
of servants
mic.
was now taking the Ogryn's spent las cartridges to be recharged. Og couldn't keep firing forever, but getting fresh charge packs would help him, Biff, and Gus to keep up their rate of fire for longer. Og was
Excuse
enjoying
me.
the new gun now that he was used to it and could see the damage it could do. He was still occasionally frustrated when he missed. Things were so much simpler when he was just blasting his ripper gun at enemies that were mere spitting distance away. Fletcher was now confident that Biff had things under control.
Yeah, this is more. I don't have a whole lot to say
as the
about
Bonehead seemed to be
my
calling
battle
out
scenes.
appropriate, high-value targets for them to shoot. The Commissar moved down to the other Ogryns and began guiding them to the front. The trio with the las cannons followed at a respectable distance, keeping their fire up. Fletcher knew that their orders were to relieve Dawn Citadel. They could not just sit here and try to outlast.
I'm trying to remember Dawn Citadel. I think it is the capital of Molech. Or is Lupercalia the capital? But it's one. I think.
So long
I can't remember. I know Lupercalia is the place where
dying for the Emperor.
Where
They
the
some kind of opportunity.
the portal is. I'm pretty sure that is.
The
Dawn
Commissar
Citadel.
got his wish as the
I want to say it was
sound
the
of
center for
Emperor's
where
thunder
the Loyalists
filled
were
the
when
air.
the Civil War broke out, and
Maybe a dozen meters beyond the front lines, the hordes of Tyranids
and
suddenly were shredded by
the Loyalists
bursts
were
of
kind of centered
shrapnel
around
as
Dawn
the
Citadel,
earth
but I don't
erupted
remember.
at their feet. This was the beginning of a rolling barrage that slowly creeped forward, providing a curtain of artillery fire to shield the infantry from the relentless horde.
Yeah, apparently this rolling barrage
Chaos
is a
of
World
battle
War I
made
tactic.
command and control difficult, but the
It
commissars
requires a
and
lot
other
of shells.
commanders quickly
It
gathered
is,
their men
you just
and
basically,
pushed forward. The Kriegers
prior
and a
to
company of lamenters led
the
way.
charge of,
With their
or if you could coordinate it right, the whole idea is you have this rolling barrage. Everyone is taking cover in the trench that you're trying to take, and you're charging behind this wall of artillery. Hopefully at a distance where you're not taking like shrapnel and stuff, but close enough that you're going to be able to be protected from return fire, and you'll be able to make it to the trenches to start attacking the enemy. I don't think las cannons have any recoil. I think they said that las guns don't have any recoil.
Back with their own barrages from their hideous weaponry. Acid bombs, clouds of burrowing insects, bioplasma, and blasts.
I don't know if that
energy
entirely
from their
makes
living
sense.
artillery tore through the ranks of advancing
Yeah, I guess so.
Kriegsmen.
I guess it makes sense to not have
merciless
any kind of
and
recoil
monstrous
if
nature
you're
of these
firing
weapons
light.
would have
like,
caused lesser men to quail
energy.
and falter in their advance.
But I don't know.
Krieg
I do not know. I don't think
closed
so.
ranks and marched forward, considering their fallen comrades blessed that they could die for the Emperor in this glorious assault. Og and the other Ogryns found themselves amongst the Kriegers
One of the things I try to
and
do with
lamenters as they
with
charged forward
Kriegsmen
behind the rolling barrage.
is
Sergeant Lazarus
have a little bit of fun with them, because
was
you
so
know
much
there's
dust and
the meme
smoke,
of they
Og
hit
could
things
see
with shovels
almost
and they
nothing. There was so much noise.
don't care
and
about
everything
dying.
was so confusing. The only thing that kept Og oriented were the immense forms of his fellow Ogryns.
Something's going on.
Just follow.
I do not know
wait
what.
for a target. Og felt a little worried. He didn't exactly know how many power packs he had for the las cannon, but he could feel that he had more in his
All right,
empty
guys.
bag.
I'll be back in a second. I just want to make sure
Despite the casualties
things are
they were
okay.
taking, the
1 second,
forces
guys.
of the Imperium continued what seemed like an inexorable march. If the artillery officers knew their craft, they could keep advancing the basilisks and keep the rolling barrage going all the way up to the gates of the citadel. Og and the other Ogryns did not understand what was happening, but they pushed ahead with the others, pouring Ripper gun fire into the scattered clumps of surviving Tyranids. It was at this moment that the thunder of the Emperor's artillery slowly fell silent. Each barrage contained fewer and fewer shells. Commissar Fletcher's eyes went wide with realization and horror as the advancing line
Apologies.
suddenly found itself thrust into the middle of the swarm of alien horrors.
Sorry, guys.
Something
My
must
front
have
door was
happened in the
apparently
back
open,
line.
and we were making sure. Housemate was making sure the
Brief moment
dogs
of
were like
silence
around.
before the keening cry of thousands.
So they did not like
thousands
just
of
leave.
bioforms pierced the ears of
Everyone's
the
okay.
dogs
We found the
from
dogs.
Space Marine alike. The tide of Xenos rushed forward to the exposed force.
It's a persistent
backs
bot.
to the
'Cause I
breach.
think it looks
Here
like
they
it's
come.
the same one.
The Ogryns and the
They
men
shouldn't
of
be able
Krieg
to
leveled their
come
guns,
back.
And Og found himself standing next to Sergeant Lazarus, though he couldn't recognize him.
For those we cherish, we die in glory.
In life, war. In death, peace. In life, shame. In death, atonement.
For the Emperor, we smash the bad bugs.
With that, a flood of Xenos descended upon the vanguard of the Imperial force.
I didn't explain what happened,
All of the men
why the artillery stopped. All right, hold on. Dogs are continuing to bark. I will return in a second.
Save the hand of the Emperor himself.
Hey, boys.
Could deliver them from the hungry Mars they now face.
More excitement and food delivery. Apology. So, yeah, one of the things that I wanted to do when I had that happen, when the rolling barrage
Little Caesar's
stopped,
cheesy stuff crazy bread is...
when I had the rolling barrage stop, the whole reason that happened was there were units of Tyranids that flanked around behind. I couldn't remember if I decided they were buried or if they were gargoyles, but essentially they got flanked and destroyed, the artillery. And so that's why they stopped. And then this is another one that is I think the 3 best episodes of Og the Ogryn are...
emotional things. The sheer momentum
I'm gonna
of a
back this
charge
up.
can push men
Hold
to
on, buddy.
extraordinary feats.
I'm going to back this up because it... Come on. Go to the beginning. Why is this being weird?
Battles
All right.
are emotional things.
So this is the
The sheer
Og the Ogryn and the Blood of
momentum
Heroes.
of a charge
it's
can
this one,
push
it's
men
the
to
Star
extraordinary
Triangle,
feats of
and
valor.
it is
Can
Og
drive
the
an enemy
Ogryn and the
into
Sons of
retreat
the
and then
Angel.
break them
These
into
are kind
a
of
full
all of
rout.
my what I think are the
But
best
that
episodes.
feverish high, that
They
euphoria
are
that
like big
fills
battle
men's
things,
hearts
but they're
when they're
also
on the winning side of a battle,
dramatic
that can be
and
taken
appropriate
away in an
and
instant. And the icy grip
yeah,
of
there's a lot of
fear
emotions in just
and
all of
panic
them.
threatens to
And
overwhelm
I think
even the bravest
they
men.
sort of mark the 3 different
combined
parts
forces
of the
guardsmen, Imperial
of the
Knights,
story.
and Lamentus Space Marines
Because you basically
had thrust
have
deep into the
Og
Tyranid forces
is
that
new and
besieged
doesn't
Dawn
really know
Citadel,
what he's doing, which is like
advancing behind a
he's
rolling
very
barrage
naive.
that broke
In
up
the
the
Star
dense
Triangle,
Tyranid
he kind of
formations.
experiences
There was a palpable rush.
he
a
experiences loss.
fire
He
that
has
drove
to
men and machine
move forward. He has to grow.
The infantry advancing in
he
the
has to
center
grow
of
also
the column
without
and
his
armored
mentor.
vehicles along the outside protecting their flank.
Then he's
in the midst
he
of
goes
this
through the difficult
glorious
process of
advance,
having Fletcher as his
the
commissar,
guns enabling it fell silent.
and we
the
have
Imperial
this
forces
battle
found
here,
themselves
which reveals a
immensely
number of
overextended
things.
in the midst of the Tyranid swarm.
We know that the Custodies are
Even
here.
the Ogryns seem to feel
know
hope die
that,
in their chests.
though
none of them really understood
we learned a
what
fair
this
bit. It's also a
strange
really cool
feeling
battle. We
was,
introduced
or
the Swarm.
why
It's
they
not the
felt
Swarm Lord. It's a Hive Tyrant.
when a
It's not the Swarm
man
Lord. It's a Hive Tyrant.
feels hope
Baby
inside
Swarm
him
Lord.
die, he is struck down to his core, stripped of everything.
My favorite episode is the one
only
when
two
Og
things
is the
that
whole
remain
series. I can't pick one.
are
Really,
his
I can't.
discipline and his training.
Oh, video's kind of too
In
loud
this
now.
moment, you either panic and die, or you make the enemy pay dearly for every life they take.
How's that? Is that better?
That's the bad bugs.
With that, the wave of flesh crashed.
Best
into the
episode is
wall
one
of
where you
armor
finally
protecting
give
the
Og a
infantry.
girlfriend.
Hormagaunts and
There's a
tried
couple
to
reasons why
swarm
I.
between the
It's like
gaps of the vehicles and
it's
quickly
funny.
overwhelm the defenders.
You could have like
Lamentus
female
leapt
Ogryns,
into the gaps,
but one of the things that I
hacking
have trouble with,
chainswords
period,
into the
is
relentless
I
horde.
can't really do
And his
female
Krieg were
voices.
quick to support, surging
I've
behind
tried,
the Space
and
Marines,
I've tried to
trying
develop. The big
plug
thing
the
is I
gaps
can't
with their
like.
bodies.
I have like
Those
one
who
girl
were not
voice, and it
marching into
only
the meat
sounds
grinder were
one
firing at
way.
any bioforms that
And
climbed
it's
on
not
top of the
great.
vehicles. A few Kriegers tried to climb atop the vehicles themselves to force the Tyranids back, but they were immediately shredded by countless bioweapons erupting from the horde.
Actually, love that
began
story. It got me
directing
very
Ogryn to help
emotional.
fill the
I'm
gaps
very
as well.
close personally
They were
to a
large and
differently
powerful,
abled
just
person
about
with
as
autism,
durable
and
as one of
Og
the
really
Space
touched me
Marines.
deeply.
Og
It's
and
one of the
Buck
things
began to
I
field
had
with the others,
hoped for
but Biff pulled
with
them
this
back.
series.
No, we
Okay,
gotta
so
kill the
sound
big
is
ones.
better.
Just
I'll
as
also try to
Biff
get a
said
little
this,
closer to my mic.
Carnifex emerged from the horde and let out a keening scream as it began to
But
tear
yeah,
into the Chimera.
kind of discussing
For the
Og the
Emperor.
Ogryn
The
and
three Ogrins fired
the
their
kind of
last
three
cannons
different
into the Carnifex.
big points in
Given
the
the
series
beast's
are
size
the
and
Star
fact that it was
Triangle,
nearly
the
point
Blood of
blank
Heroes,
range,
and then
the Ogrins had no
the Sons of
trouble
the
finding
Angel.
their mark. One shot tore a
After
large
this
hole
episode,
through
I think I'm going to take a
chest,
break
blasting apart its
and just
bioweapon.
I'm going to
A
pause
second
it up.
blew off one of its
Or
legs,
do I want to?
and a
I could
third
just let it
struck
go
right in the face, causing
and
the
come
beast
back
to
once I
tumble
have.
back into the mass of
I don't want
its
to hold you guys up. Yeah,
Giving
I'll
the
just
Ogrins
let
a
it go.
moment
I'll turn
to
up the
shove
volume
damaged Chimera
and
back into place. Bolter fire raked
I will
over
come
the
back
top of
and
vehicles, ripping
continue my
apart
commentary.
bioforms, supported even further by the trio of Imperial Knights standing above the fray, firing their autocannons into the teeming masses.
This
of
was
Tyranid.
this was a
These
nice
knights quickly
way
became the target
for me
Tyranid
to kind of
artillery,
build
and their ion shields flashed white
tension
with
as
each
far
attack they
as
absorbed.
like
The
threat
situation
goes.
was
Like
utterly
to be, I like creating the
The
feeling of
Tyranids
slowly
were now
being
flanking into
overwhelmed.
the mountains.
And even though you're
Lamenter's scouts
brave,
countered them as best they could.
you
keep
can't.
them from
It's
reaching
just
the
the
exposed
inability to.
Og fired again and again into the largest creatures he could see. Wherever the las cannons fired,
The
at
inability to
least
kind
one of
of
the blasts hit their
do
target,
anything about these
and then the
huge,
focused fire from other units would
this
help finish
endless
them off.
this endless horde that
But
is
every
just
time
pressing
the
in on
larger
you.
bioforms appeared, the smaller bioforms would advance. The men of Krieg died in droves trying to fill the gaps. Eventually, that duty was given over to the Lamenters and the Ogryn, who could last a little longer in melee with these creatures. But even these brave warriors could not fight off the waves forever. One of the knights suddenly succumbed to the relentless barrage of artillery fire. His ion shield failed, and his rugged metal body became pockmarked with acid.
I'm occasionally listening into where things are, but like I can't
He stood for a
talk
moment before a
while
powerful
I
blast
hear
of
it, so I'm sort of
bioplasma
taking my
bored a
headphones
hole
on and
into his
off
cockpit.
in order to
Tumbled
listen
back
to certain
into the
parts to see where we are and what we're
Spirits of
talking
both
about.
Man and machine extinguishing. Og could feel that he was nearly out of power packs for his las cannon. He could see the Ogryns of his squad
Eric's saying
pressing
that
as
there
hard
are
as
free
they
voice
could to the
modulators that
gap.
could help with the female
He
voice
watched
problem.
as lines of
Maybe.
crimson appeared over
But one
their
of the things that
bodies, and their
I
hearty forms
take
were slowly eaten
pride
away by
in
acid.
is I have
by
not a
one,
whole lot of voice
Ogryn
modulation.
slowly fell.
Might be able
Chimera's
to
lamenters lasted a bit longer,
do more
but
female
even
voice
they
things.
could not fight forever. The defenders
Well, I'll look
became
into it because that could
fewer
definitely
and
help.
fewer.
Because
Fletcher
I
stepped up
could
with his
try
Ogryn and leapt
to
into the fray, slicing
get
through
a voice
bioforms.
actress who
He and
does
Bill
different stuff
held off
for
a
my
trio of
videos,
Tyranid warriors.
but I
Bill
would
pounded
likely
away
need
with his
to
fists
pay
and his
her,
rubber
or if it
gun
was just
as
like somebody
Fletcher
I
dodged
knew.
this way and that.
I don't
These
have
things were incredibly fast, and the commissar was
a
avoiding
female
their
friend who's
slashes by the
always
skin of his
here
teeth.
and always free to do that
Bill
sort of thing.
crushed the head of
And if
one
I'm
of
on
the
a
warriors
schedule
as
of
Fletcher
like
buried his
episode
chainsword into the
releases, I
chest
don't
of
want to
another.
rely on that.
Just as they achieved this
But a
small
complete
victory,
modulation of
the
my voice
commissar
sort
was
of
suddenly pierced
undercuts
through
one of the
chest
points of
by the
this channel, which is
mantis-like
to
claws
showcase
of
my
a
voice
lynx
acting
that
stuff.
had been hiding amidst the swarm. His body was yanked towards the enveloping horde. Bill hesitated as his commander suddenly vanished and was swarmed under by the living carpet of blades and teeth. Even as he was pulled out of sight,
Okay, here we go.
Commissar Fletcher was defiant to the last, pulling the pin on a frag grenade and shouting back, "My blood is the Emperor's currency. May it be well spent." There was a blast in the midst of the horde, and suddenly there was no one protecting the gap.
Fletcher's
Commissar
death.
occupied.
Yeah, I think
dropped his
I
las
appreciated
cannon and
Fletcher's
pulled out
death. I don't think it was quite as
adamantine rod
dramatic
that
as
Fletcher
like
had gotten them to use as melee
Gallus's. And this was
Hey,
again the choice of what it was I gonna do.
Smash and sticks.
Yeah, the deaths of Fletcher and Biff. I wanted this to be a very costly, hard to take battle. So losing both Fletcher and Biff kind of drove home how deadly this was, and having Og get kind of chewed up as well.
Now, it was time for him to smash the bad bugs, to make them pay for taking his commissars and his Ogryn friends away.
For Gallus, for Fletcher, for my Ogryn friends!
The Ogryn trio was quickly joined by a handful of lamenters, including Sergeant Lazarus.
For the Emperor, brothers, each moment we live is a moment of relief for the defenders of Dawn's Citadel.
With the armored vehicles being shredded to pieces, breaks along the line began to occur. Imperial forces had been cut off from the rest of the army that was still positioned in the mountains. They began to collapse into pockets of resistance centered around tight knots of lamenters or around the feet of Imperial knights. Biff, Gus, Og, and lamenters fought with every fiber of their being, forcing a stalemate against the endless tide of enemies. Gus caught a flesh borer to the face, and he cried out in pain and anger. A scything limb knocked him from his feet. Sergeant Lazarus fired into the swarm to drive back Gus's assailants, but the horrible, boring creature had slipped up Gus's nose and burrowed its way deep into his skull. He twitched for a moment, and then lay still. Biff quickly picked up his fallen comrade's
Biff,
cudgel
Gus, and Fletcher all died.
Slinging 2 weapons into the fray. Sergeant Lazarus looked like a whirlwind of death, making precise strikes honed by years of training indoctrination. Biff was like an enraged Grox that had...
I don't have a whole lot to say about this scene. I'm going to probably let it play out.
And smashed, and seemed to shrug off blows to his own body, only answering them with bellows and headbutts.
From start to finish, floor and decor design experts are here to help with free design.
Ugh. Really drew...
Then that it came. A towering form emerged from the swarm. 4 bladed limbs grew from its terrible shape as it dwarfed the mighty Ogryns, standing more than twice the height of Og. The thing was nearly the size of the Imperial Knights. It had come to deliver the killing blow, to end this pocket of resistance. A hive tyrant. It gave a ululating cry and pierced through the cacophony of battle before it dove at the remaining defenders. Biff ran forward to meet this creature. He swung his 2 adamantium rods at the thing.
So, I did want to have a kind of villain in this. Like, I don't want to be quiet for this whole time, because this fight is going to go on for a while. But as far as the Hive Tyrant goes, I think he works for the villain of this story. That it's a immense, powerful, dangerous Tyranid bioform. I didn't want to use the Swarm Lord just because, I don't know, the Swarm Lord is the bad guy in every Tyranid story, and he always gets beaten. I don't know, it just seems a little,
the creature focused its psychic blast at the heavy weapon.
It just seems a little bit weird to make the Swarm Lord show up again. It's a little bit tired.
Took advantage of the Hive Tyrant's divided attention and managed to strike at its head at the absolute limit of his reach. The creature hissed as it simply pulled its limbs towards itself, slicing through Biff, causing rivers of crimson to run from him. The bonehead hit the ground. Sergeant Lazarus and his lamenters tried to use their bolters and chainswords against this creature, but they simply could not do enough damage to its thick carapace. 1 slice. 1 lamenter. Another slice. Another marine. Tears were streaming down Og's face as he grabbed a piece of wreckage from a nearby chimera. The enraged Ogryn swung several tons of ruined vehicle into the Hive Tyrant, staggering.
So, question: is the whole story complete, and are you just dishing it out in chunks, or are you making it on the go? A little bit of both. Like, I have the outline of things done. I don't have
everything.
Like, I don't have the
would
whole
not
thing
die.
pre-recorded and written and ready to
Two
go.
slashes,
I write
the
each
tyrant
section
separated
and record it.
Lazarus's arms from his body,
But I do have like an
slicing
outline
through
written ahead of
Sarah
time.
as if it was
It's
nothing.
each episode
It
is
bore down on
written
Og
and
next,
recorded at the same
ignoring
time.
the Kriegsmen that tried to slow its advance, swatting them away.
I don't go through the whole. It might make more sense for me to like get ahead on things.
Two more strikes from the monster. Og
But I don't know. It's
tumbled
like
backwards.
trying to get ahead of
He
that
was
sort of
confused
thing
because he was no longer
doesn't make a
swinging the
whole lot of
chimera
sense
like
to
its
me
round.
because
His left arm
I
fell
just
to the
instead
ground,
of being
and Og could feel himself tumbling back
instead
as
of writing
his
and
left
recording
leg
one
gave
thing
way
at a
too.
time,
The
I would
beast stood
I don't know.
over
The work would
Og
be at the same rate, so I don't know.
and let
There's not really a
its
point in not
horrifying
writing and
cry.
recording at the same time.
Miracles are rare things. Saint Celestine, or the Sanguinor, or the Legion of the Damned appearing at the times of most dire need are wondrous occasions. But these are the most rare of miracles. The more common miracles are the ones which men perform every day when they give everything they have, and when there's absolutely nothing left. The Emperor provides.
I always get
that
nervous
which
when I
men
do
cannot.
kind of the dramatic
The
speech
defenders
things.
of Dawn Citadel
Um,
had not been idle.
It's
Their
very
commanders
difficult to kind of
recognized that the
build
combined
drama
relief force
and then
was
have it
trying
pay
to
off
connect with the
correctly.
forces
Have
defending
people
the sacred
experience
fortress.
the
With the Tyranids dividing their attention
the emotions
between
the way I
newly
want them
arrived
to.
force and the
Because if you
ongoing
don't
assault
pull
of the Citadel's
off
void
dramatic
shields,
correctly,
the servants of
it
the
falls
Emperor
flat on its
saw their
face. It is
chance
either
to take a
boring
risk
or
and
it's
tried to
funny.
break the siege
And
once
both
for
of those
all.
things would be
Just
that
as
are
the
kind of
relief force
appalling.
had cleaved its way through the teeming
If you're
swarm,
going for something serious
so
and it's silly,
the army within
or
Dawn
it's
Citadel
boring,
come
it
out
it
to
is
meet
that
them.
is like a
But there was something
that is a
different
very, very
about
bad
the
thing, and I
Citadel's
don't, and it would be
attack.
hard for me to take
So
that if
when
people
Og
weren't.
fell backwards,
Uh,
and the hive
I want people to
tyrant was
find
about
my
to
funny stuff
extinguish
funny, and I
his
want
life,
my people to find my serious
it
stuff
was
serious.
then
And
that
if
they came,
they are
flying on majestic
swapping their
steeds
emotions
of
on that,
shining
that's
metal,
that means I
wearing
didn't do my
golden
job.
armor, wielding great interceptor lances. The custodies of the Emperor came and fell upon the hive
Yeah,
tyrant
someone said
like a
in this
thunderbolt,
episode they were like, and then
piercing
the
the
winged
great
hussars
beast by the tongue.
arrive, which yeah, I kind of wanted the
Og's eyes
cavalry
struggled
to
to
show up.
focus
I wanted them to
as his vision swam.
good old fashioned,
He tried to move,
cavalry comes
but
to
was
save the
taken
day
by
sort of
darkness.
moment.
When Og
Which I very
regained
much enjoyed.
consciousness, he found himself in an unfamiliar room. Everything was white. The Ogryn's weapons and armor were nowhere to be found. Og looked down at himself, wearing an enormous medical gown.
I also
He could
enjoyed.
see that his arm and leg
I think this is
were
this is going to be a
replaced by
break once I'm done.
Og's head hurt a bit too, as he brought his hand up to feel some kind of metal plating that had been implanted in his skull.
You're finally awake.
Og looked over to see Sergeant Lazarus lying in the bed next to him.
Oh, I didn't. I also
without
didn't
his
realize
power
that
armor,
somebody
but
commented
sporting
at one
two
point
new
that
augmented arms.
it's like, oh, so you're finally awake, and they made the Skyrim reference. I was like, oh, I didn't think of it.
Being in such a
Good, you're finally
situation
awake.
would have overwhelmed Og. Might
Uh,
have caused him to panic.
I didn't.
However,
Yeah.
He somehow
I
was
didn't
able
mean to
manage
do
his
that.
emotions and think a little
I
bit
didn't
about what
think of
might
it.
have happened.
Where am I?
Sergeant Lazarus's answer was interrupted as a familiar figure entered the room. In a medical facility in Dawn Citadel, where you have undergone extensive surgery to replace your damaged limbs. Also,
I like
gone
Gallus
through
being
the
able to show up here.
biochemical
It is like a
Ogryn
nice
neuroenhancement
emotional
process.
beat.
Congratulations, Bonehead Og. Walking in on a pair of his own augmetic legs.
Silly is better than boring. It's true. I would rather be silly than boring. If I screw up, I would rather do that than. All right, so I'm gonna take a break here. You guys can. I'm gonna make sure that I'm not. I'm gonna let this continue to play.
Karaoke night takes
Let me get out of here. Oh. I know, I'm not going to react to myself reacting to my own stream. I'm not doing a stream where I'm reacting to my own stream. Alright, I'm going to turn this up, and I'm going to let this run. I need to use the restroom. I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves.
Commissar
I'm going to let this run, and I will be back in a little bit.
Near the foot of Ogg's bed and sat down. I imagine you have a few questions.
Yeah, how'd you come back from the Emperor's house?
What? You thought I died? Who told you I died? The Ogryn thought for a moment, his neural implant beginning to whir as the Ogryn tried to recall.
You said that you was going to the Emperor's house, and then Biff said you was going to the Emperor's house.
Did no one brief you after the Astara Triangle? The first battle with the bad bugs? Once again, Ogg furrowed his brow, working hard to recall.
Yeah, they said we needed to move out, so we got a new commissar.
So nobody told you? Nobody told you that I was merely severely wounded? Nobody told you that Fletcher would take my place until I recovered and made it back to the front? Ogg shook his head. Fletcher probably didn't know that you hadn't been told. Hell, they might not have even told him. Well, that's bureaucracy for you. People telling the Emperor's orders, I think they got confused. Ogg nodded his head.
That makes sense. I get confused sometimes when I get orders. I got really confused at the end of the battle. What happened? I saw these really shiny guys, and they came out of the sky,
I am back.
And they killed the bad bugs. Then I don't really remember anything.
Those were the Adeptus Custodes, the Emperor's own companions. I must admit, I know very little about why they're here. Though since the start of the Indomitus Crusade, they've left Holy Terror for the first time
So
in
one of the things about the Custodes being
for a
here,
very long time.
I'm gonna be honest, I wasn't sure if the Custodes would have
the garrison
been
at Dawn
sent
Citadel
here
came forth to support the offensive.
in the time,
there
in
were
the wake of
severe losses.
Gilliman's return
But
and the Indomitus
with the
Crusade,
Custodes leading the way, we were able to break
I
the
wasn't
siege.
sure if
Once the Hive Tyrant was slain,
if
the
it would
ranks
make
of the
sense for
Falzinos
the
lost
Custodes to
cohesion.
then be sent to Molech to guard these
The bad
important
bugs
things.
got confused
Or
when they
if
lost
these were
their
a
commissar.
Custodes group who and they were
The
dedicated
bad bugs
to
got real big commissars.
protecting
Yes.
certain points of interest. So
Yes, they
you
do.
have a dedicated
What
custodian
about
in
Fletcher
Lupercalia.
and
You
Biff
have a couple in
and
Dawn
everyone
Citadel.
else?
When they're just protecting
Commissar Gallus sighed.
these important places.
Fletcher and Biff are dead. Most of the old squad died with them,
So
as well as
the
most
answer
of the
is,
company of
I
lamenters.
think I'm probably leaning.
Several
What the
regiments of
explanation
Kriegsmen,
is probably
a dozen or so
that they've
knights,
been here
scores of armored vehicles.
since the Civil War,
Our losses
since
were quite heavy.
since the Horus Heresy.
I'm not sure who else made it from the squad.
But
was
I don't
able to
explain
find
it,
you
so
because of Fletcher's recommendation that you undergo the
if
bone
the other thing
procedure.
makes more sense.
So far, I haven't found any other survivors.
Yeah, to me it doesn't
It was a
really.
very difficult
The whole
battle.
Custodes story doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Sergeant
that they
Lazarus shook his head.
are just on Terra, not doing anything,
No
literally
doubt
not
the
doing
high
anything for
casualty
10,000
rate will be
years.
blamed on the unlucky lamenters, and not on a poor showing by the rear guard failing to defend the artillery.
Unfortunately, that seems to be the case. I've heard the men grumbling about having to work with the so-called cursed Space Marine chapter. On the positive side,
That was
the
one of the things I
Kriegsmen
wanted to
seem
do
very
with this
excited about
was,
the opportunity to fight alongside you again,
React to
and they never get along with anyone.
the Lamenters'
Lazarus just shook his head again with a rueful
bad
grin.
reputation.
The
One of the things
commissar
that's very
matched him with a
hard in
suppressed smile.
Warhammer 40k is
Gallus turned back to
understanding what people
now,
generally know about what's
the
going
army
on.
is pushing them
It's
back
like,
to
do guardsmen
to the
like
capital
not
city
know
of
that much
Molech.
about Space
Commissar
Marines
Gallus could not bring
are
himself
Space
to say
Marines
the name
common enough that
Lupercalia.
someone who has fought in the Guard for a
Lazarus
while
scowled.
would have encountered
I
them?
cannot comprehend why
Do Space
they kept
Marines
that
have
accursed
reputation
name.
by chapter?
How?
Or is
After
a Space Marine just a
10,000
Space Marine to
years,
most
how
guys?
can they still honor the great betrayer? And why hasn't anyone done anything about it?
Because to do so, one would need to challenge the word of the Emperor himself. A man walked into the ward, wearing the symbol of the Inquisition on his shining power armor. The Commissar
So,
and
Inquisitor
the Space Marine eyed
Torix,
him suspiciously.
I think I get better with his accent as it
Believe
goes
or
on.
not, before he fell to the ruinous powers.
But
Horus
Inquisitor Torix
was
is
a humble
kind of
man.
part of my...
He
One of the
refused
things that
to
I
name
very much
his
believe
legion
about
after
Warhammer
himself.
40k
And
is
it was
important
not
about the
he
lore is that
who named the great
all
city of Lupercalia.
of
It was by edict
all of human
of the
culture
Emperor
should be
that it was
represented
named
in
so,
Warhammer 40k.
honoring the deeds of his greatest son.
Every country, every time period, every
the Emperor
kind of
has given
warrior
no orders
should have a
regarding
place
the
in Warhammer,
nomenclature
and that was kind of one of the
Lupercalia
reasons
since
why
the
I decided to
LSE.
make Torix French.
And there is no one
Hopefully the
with
accent
the
is not too
authority
hard on French
to
ears.
override the
I tried
direct
to
word of
make
the
it not
Emperor,
ridiculous
save
sounding.
the Emperor himself.
But I also have
the
in a
sergeant
number of
clenched his jaw.
and a number of
Horus,
characters
humble,
where they have
the
different
great
accents,
city of
and I try to
Lupercalia.
have them like
You,
I have
sir,
and have different
are a
cultures
heretic
represented. So I
of
have
the highest order.
The Inquisitor
there's like Jewish legends
No need to
in
lose your temper,
Heart of
son
Iron.
of Saint
There's also
You wouldn't want to make a mess of the Hospitium.
in Vladislav and
The
Blockhead.
name
Vladislav
Lupercalia
is
has become
he's of
a
Slavic
reminder
descent.
And a warning to all on Molech
And
that even the Emperor's
there's actually
most
later on
loyal
there is a
subjects
I think
may
it's
succumb to their
a
own
captain that they
pride
contact at one
and
point
lust for power.
where
I
they
am not certain that the
that captain
Night
I think
Houses
is
really took the lesson about
is
pride.
Turkish. Because I think he says
Commissar
something along the
Gallus
lines of
stood.
Imperator
Inquisitor.
Tovarish, just like the emperor
Turkish.
protects in
You may call
Turkish.
me Dogs. Gentlemen,
But yeah, I try to
I
I want to do a lot of different
have a
cultures
proposal
in
for you.
in
scheme
40k.
are you hatching,
A lot of
Inquisitor?
different
I am collecting volunteers.
stories, a lot of different kinds of things. It's I have like my own ideas about like
nation
what
that
diversity
may
means,
determine the
and
salvation or damnation
it means like
of the
a
entire
genuine, at least a minor understanding of different cultures and trying to represent them. I did try to work in an explanation as
Black
to why.
box. It's just smart wine math.
I was trying to work in explanations as to why it would still be called
And
Lupercalia.
He had heard guardsmen talk.
Let me back it up a little
Og looked the man over. He had heard guardsmen talk in hushed tones.
bit. But it seemed like
about the
a
Inquisitor
40k
that was
thing to
rumored
do
be part of
to
this
have
campaign.
Lupercalia
But the Ogryn had
keep
never
that
seen one
name
before.
because the Emperor
Honestly,
said this
he
is
had
going to be
expected
called
someone
Lupercalia, and
Or
you
at
can't
least someone with a really
countermand
nice
a
hat.
thing that the Emperor said.
With his power
So even
armor,
though it is named
the
after
Inquisitor
Horus,
just looked like
it
a
wouldn't be changed
small
even
space
after the
marine.
Horus heresy because
Og
the
wasn't
Emperor
really
decided
sure
this
why
place was
this
going to be called
man made the other
Lupercalia.
guardsmen whisper so much. Sergeant Lazarus was fuming. He had no interest in being an inquisitorial puppet. Gallus, on the other hand, was inclined to be a bit more diplomatic. My Lord Inquisitor, if I may ask, what is this sector-threatening situation? What do you need from us?
So the whole
Inquisitor
what
Torix
exactly do the
inclined his
Tyranids
head,
want?
acknowledging
Because
the
I
Commissar.
assume you guys have all
I need
um,
you to be brave.
you know what the story
and
of
capable.
Og is, and if you don't know the
And
story of Og, you should
I
go
need you
stop
to
watching
do
this
your
stream
part.
and go listen to the playlist.
You will be briefed with the others on the
But
details of
the
this
whole
mission.
thing of why are the Tyranids interested in
I am
Lupercalia?
happy to satisfy
So
any other
what I
curiosity
kind
you
of
may have on other subjects.
so in Lupercalia there is
Very
a
well.
portal to the warp
Why are
that
the
the Emperor went
custodies
to and made
Are they?
bargains with
Rest
the
assured, they are not
the Chaos
part
Gods
of my retinue.
in order to make
Nor
his
are they working in
Primarchs.
concert with me. They are
And
here
so
of their own
why the
accord.
Tyranids are interested in it
And I
because they don't
suspect
use the
that they
warp.
are here for the same reason that I am.
I was sort of inspired by
As far
a
as I
story
know,
that
there are less
is
than a
probably
dozen of them
not
on
canon
board.
at this point, but there was a
Half of
story
them
about
were here
Tyranids where
in Dawn Citadel.
basically
I suspect that the
I forget what the
others
psychic
are defending
variety.
Lupercalia.
I know what they are. I'm just blanking on the names, but it's essentially the Tyranid psychers.
And now you're
One of
picking
them
your way through the
managed to.
survivors to find some
There's a
suitable
splinter
fodder for
fleet that
your
attacked
plan.
a
My
craft
dear
world,
Sergeant,
and one of these
I
psychic
have never had any
Tyranid
design to the
bioforms
custodies.
got into the
I
Infinity
am a
Circuit,
proud man,
fed on the Infinity Circuit,
but
and
I
then
am
turned
not
into
so
like
bold or foolish
giant
as to
psychic
interfere with the Adeptus
god
custodians.
Tyranid thing and tore the craft world apart.
I am only a mortal man after all.
Some people say
Gentlemen,
that it's a very dumb story
I did
because
not come to
like
you looking for dupes
the
or cat's paws.
the Infinity Circuits would
I
be very
came
well
to you
protected, and also
because you
Eldar
are the best suited to the
can
task
see the
at hand.
future, so they like
Both of
sense
you
this kind of danger.
are well regarded by your
Um,
chapter and the commissariat, respectively.
But
Even your Ogryn
so
friend
basically,
has a
I
bit
was
of a
sort of
spot
thinking
about
like
him.
that
Inquisitor
the Tyranids
Torek
are
glanced
seeking
over to Arg,
this
who
portal
had been watching and
because
listening
it can
intently,
be a source of
his
just
head
psychic
turning
energy for
towards
them to
whoever was
feed on.
speaking, and
For
he
their
at least gave
psychic
the impression
bioforms
that
to
he was
just
following
feed
the
on
conversation.
and essentially
The
use this
Inquisitor
kind of
examined
warp
the
energy
Ogryn's
and
medical
incorporate it
information at the foot of
into
the Guardsman
their own
Orc,
bioforms.
do you understand
Um,
what is going on?
That was basically my thought of why they're interested in it.
You want us to do something?
Yeah, zoanthropes. That's what they're called. I just couldn't
kinda
remember what they're.
secret? Sergeant Lazarus.
You just have
sounds
sometimes
like
you just
he
brain
doesn't
fart.
think it's a good idea. And Commissar Gallus asked about the custodies, right? The shiny ones I saw before I went to sleep for a really long time. I wanted to know about them too.
What's
Danny
going on? What's the
wanted
problem?
to know why you want us, and you said it's 'cause we do a good job.
This is a
Inquisitor
watch
seemed amused by Og's
group
words.
where we're watching all of
should
Og
like
the
what they say
Ogryn, and
around
I'm
you,
doing a
Ogryn.
commentary over it.
You were paying far more attention than I gave you credit for. The Inquisitor turned his attention back to Lazarus and Gallus. Listen, gentlemen. I simply do not have time to twist arms, and I am not going to be able to be diplomatic for much longer. Lazarus, I need you to lead your lamenters. Gallus,
Yeah, I just
I
want to
need
make sure
your
it's not like a
expertise
problem.
with the Ogryns. Gallus nodded and gave a salute. His face was stern, masking his inner thoughts and any misgivings he had about the situation. Sergeant
One of the other
Lazarus sighed.
issues that I had is
absolutely
it's
do not
sometimes
trust you,
difficult
Inquisitor.
to
But
keep
as you
Og
said, we do
in
not
an
have the
interesting
luxury
position
of quibbling if
when it
this
comes to these
campaign
stories.
is going to be successful.
to like have him
I will speak with my captain, and we will decide the best course of action.
to have him be
regarding this
involved
plan
with
of
like
yours.
this secret mission thing.
You are the highest-ranking space marine in Dawn Citadel.
But I think if
Your
you have
fellow
Ogryn's
lamenters
geared
have
out
joined the
and
Custodes' offensive to liberate Lupercalia.
they've been effectively
Only
trained
the
by
garrison
Gallus,
and the
I think it
wounded
makes
remain.
sense. I think it makes enough sense.
And it is
for
down
to
to
work.
you to command your brothers and make a choice.
Then we will attend this briefing, but I will commit to nothing until I see the merit of your
Is it
plan.
hard to like understand
I
what
will
I'm
do
saying, or is it
nothing
like
against my
confusing to listen to
conscience.
both?
Fair enough. I appreciate your
Because I can
candor.
turn down my
would
volume
expect
or I
nothing
can
less
turn
from a
down the
true son
volume
of
in the story
Sanguinius.
if you'd rather hear me talk about it.
Commissar Gallus, I've already been in communique with the Commissariat, and have arranged for your next command. How do you and Og feel about commanding a squad of Bullgryns? Gallus gestured for the bonehead to walk with him. Well,
The Emperor kept us alive for a reason, my friend. Let's go have a look at your
Gotta say, it's been a little bit difficult.
With that,
I still have a
Commissar
long way to
Gallus
go in this in this story.
followed Inquisitor
So we
Taurus
still have 13, 14.
to see what the Emperor had in store.
Yeah, we're on 13 of 20.
No man,
And I think most of the
my
end
mother
ones
and my
are pretty
father,
long.
and all my comrades as well. Thank you all for listening to the ongoing.
Oh, this is my first Og the Ogryn
If you
one where I
enjoyed the
think I
story,
have my
please consider liking and commenting. If you are new to the channel, please consider
my
subscribing.
modern
And if you are confused, there is a link to the
outro.
Og the Ogryn playlist if you wish to hear the story from the beginning. I have just recently passed over 9,000 subscribers, and now
Over
we are on the
9,000
march to
subscribers.
10,000. I have
That
a
was a
few
while
ideas
ago.
for some fun stuff to do when we hit that milestone, but I would also appreciate your own thoughts and input on what might be an
That's a
enjoyable
little
way
dated,
for us to
but whatever.
celebrate as a community. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Alright,
Thank you
I'm
all
just
for
gonna
your support.
silence this because we're gonna have ads coming up. I do not
and
understand
Og
how
left
people
the
stream
medical
for
ward
hours and
and
hours on
proceeded
end.
to
I
the
get so
Ogryn
tired
barracks.
after just like a little bit.
Have you ever seen Bulgryns before, Og? The Ogryn shook his head.
I don't think so. Are they different from regular Ogryns?
They're heavily armored shock troops that specialize in melee combat. They're trained to form a line at the sound of gunfire. I would have preferred to have a bit more time to work with them and teach them a few more orders, but we do not have that luxury.
Okay, so they line up and smash stuff. So what should I
This one
do?
sounds a lot louder than the other ones.
Make sure they're facing the right way when the shooting starts. And you will likely need to help me break up the formation if there's a false alarm. The Commissar and the Bonehead entered the Ogryn barracks. At the
You
moment,
guys let me know if
none of the
sound
Bulgryns
is, like,
had their
weirdly
equipment.
off.
They were wearing little more than their skivvies. Almost all of them had been wounded. Some sported augmetic limbs, others showed evidence of extensive skin grafts from acid burns. Still others looked like they had taken grievous wounds to their torso, and likely had one or more augmetic organs. When the pair entered, the commanding officer approached them. Og thought that he looked a bit odd. The Bonehead was used to officers having crisp uniforms. This one seemed to be wearing bits and pieces of whatever he could find. Gallus recognized him as one of the mordant acid dogs. The officer was casually puffing on a fat low tube as he addressed Gallus and gestured to the Ogryns. I take it you're the ones running off with my big boys. You take care of them, yeah? They're good lads. Line! As the commander barked the order, the Bulgryns instinctively snapped into a line with surprising speed. They stood with one arm in front of them and one above their heads, as if they were wielding a shield and some sort of melee weapon.
I wonder if
the commander put them at ease, and they
if I
relaxed.
somehow goofed
Listen
this
up,
when I
Bulgryns.
originally
This is
put it up.
Commissar Gallus and your new Bonehead. You listen to them like you was listening to me. The Ogryns looked over at the two new faces. They're all yours. Right, Biff. Let's put them through their paces.
Did you just call me Biff?
I like that little
Closed
moment.
his eyes as he gave a small, pained smile. I suppose I did.
Little moment
As my
of
Bonehead for 7 years.
being used to
Force of
Biff
habit.
as
Okay.
that's one. I guess I haven't talked about the relationship between Gallus and Biff.
Well, do you remember the marching drill?
But I think you kind of get the way it was.
Stop
Like
and
they
go.
had been
Look
fighting
this
together
way,
for
that way.
quite a long time.
Turn around.
I think I said they had been
Oh,
fighting
I think so.
alongside each other
And
for
let's get to work.
5, 7
Og
years. I
and
can't remember
Gallus
what,
spent
what
the
the
next few
actual
days
what
going
the actual
through
thing was,
routine
but
drills with the
they had
Bulgryns
been fighting together for a
and preparing
while,
for the upcoming mission.
and
Eventually, the time came to be briefed
Biff was
by
kind of
Inquisitor
one of
Taurus.
Gallus's first
Gallus and Og filed into a
Ogryns that
fairly
kind of,
small briefing
to
room.
his mind, demonstrated
There
their
were 20
potential.
lamenters, including Sergeant Lazarus, seated in front of a large screen. The Commissar was accustomed to being dwarfed by others.
So for him
But he
to
had never
like,
attended
all
a
right, we're
briefing
gonna
where
get
he
back
was
into training
so
people.
much smaller than everyone else.
You know, at this point he would
Gallus
have been
decided
relying
to
on
remain
Biff,
standing
but
in order to see the presentation.
Og is his bonehead now.
There were low murmurs
Yeah, 7
among the
years.
Space Marines.
That's what I thought it was.
Gallus
Because
could
it was.
feel this.
I'm mixing up my years because it's
Eventually,
7
Inquisitor
years
Taurus
Biff was
emerged
there,
and turned on the screen.
and it was 5 years from the is it 5 years from the end of Og the Ogryn to Og the Ogryn Returns?
I have asked for your chapter's cooperation is because this mission is of the utmost importance. It is possible that the Custodes-led offensive could liberate Lupercalia without us. But if the Xenos should reach this particular asset, the Inquisitor pointed out a red dot on the screen in the depths of the city, then the offensive will be for nothing.
One of the things I kind of...
Tyrannids can be excellent
it's sort of the rule of
the setting
the outer is I wish
it is
that,
possible that the security of the aforementioned asset could be compromised.
Og and Gallus would not be allowed to remember
and Landia
would not be allowed to like see the portal and be able to talk about it to anybody. So they would be mind scrubbed. But it's just one of those things of
only entryway to the asset.
I wish that that could have been part of their character growth, that they could remember
is complete,
that they, you know,
until we are
all the crazy things that they saw and the character development that happened, it all kind of goes, at least that part of it goes away because they had to be mind scrubbed. Because either they were going to be killed or they have to like have their memory erased. Oh, did I stop the thing? I stopped the video, I'm sorry.
Sergeant Lazarus was the first to respond.
What is the nature of this asset? Is it some kind of weapon?
The asset is a long-kept secret for millennia, and hopefully it shall remain so. Suffice to say that if we are unable to complete this mission, this could create a sector-wide calamity and possibly threaten Holy Terra herself. One of the other Lamenters went next.
This mission seems like it is suitable for the Adeptus Astartes alone. But I understand that this mission will also involve Auxilia.
I understand your hesitation. Ogryns are not typically used in such a tactical manner. But the mission is relatively simple. Move to the target and hold it against enemy assault. For the parameters of this mission, the use of Ogryns is appropriate. This is the best
Still got 13 people listening.
Together
That's cool.
Without weakening the Lupercalia offensive. If we fail, or if the offensive fails, we will doom billions of people. Inquisitor Torix pushed a button, and the screen began to retract into the ceiling. As he did so, the wall behind him began to open up as well. Now, I understand
there was some
that your
discussion
chapter has had a long and difficult
where
history.
did this guy get all of
not
these
the most well-equipped chapter,
tactical dreadnought
and that many view
things.
Yours as a cursed existence.
And
There's not much
the
I
answer
can
was
do
that
about
he
However,
you can have chapters
I
of
think
Space
your
Marines that
chapter
go renegade.
may appreciate this
It doesn't
gift
mean that they
from my
fall to
order.
chaos. It just means that they are
We seized these from a group of renegades.
they're kicked out of the
Careful.
Imperium.
The
They're
paint is fluid.
I think it
back
depends
wall
on the
to
renegades. They can be kicked
20
out and like be
suits
seeking to
of
repent.
tactical
They
dreadnought
can
armor
leave because
vibrant
of the
yellow
tyranny of the Imperium,
of
but they're not
Lamenters.
going to succumb to
The
chaos.
Space Marines did
They
not
could
gouge.
have given
There
up
was
on
no
their duties
chatter,
and kind of
no tittering,
been more interested in
but
becoming
Inquisitor Torix
forming
grinned
their
to
own
himself.
space empire or conquering random
did not
planets
seem
or
to
like
be
doing
any
kind of
further
their own thing.
questions.
Most
moment or two of
renegades,
this
if they're
silence,
not trying
A
to
young woman bearing the symbol of the
if
Inquisition
they're not
on her
trying
armor entered
to
from the back room. She quickly moved
return, if they're
towards
not trying to
Inquisitor
repent
Torix
and
whispered something in his
get
ear.
reinstated as like a real
The touch
chapter,
of amusement
then they
in his
usually will
face
eventually succumb to
away as
chaos.
he
That's
nodded
usually what
solemnly.
happens.
I have just received word that the void shields of Lupercalia have fallen. We must leave immediately.
So Lorenzo, you got a comment about
The Xenos
my
have
representing
entered the
diversity
city.
in 40K? What do you
No man
you got a
will call
question?
me. My mother and my father, and all my comrades
I'm
as
gonna
well.
turn off the sound for this because I gotta pause it for once it gets to. Well, let me know what your question is, and I will do my best to answer it. Okay, getting through the ads. Let me get this going from the beginning. I'm going to pause this and get it going right from the beginning. Alright, here we go.
After Inquisitor Torix revealed that Lupacalia's outer defenses had been breached by the Tyranid swarm, the Inquisitor began moving briskly towards the door. Og and Gallus began to leave as well. Torix paused when he saw that the Lamenters had not moved from their seats. Sergeant Lazarus alone stood to speak for his chapter. The Inquisitor's face soured.
What is the meaning of this? We must leave immediately. I hand you the power to destroy the enemies of the Emperor, and you hesitate.
Inquisitor, we must know more about this asset. I am young, but I am familiar with my chapter's history. Terrible things have happened because we were too trusting and naive. This is an extremely dangerous mission, Inquisitor. What happens if you were to die?
Somebody
what
also
happens if
brought
we were to be overrun? Should we destroy the
that
asset?
there aren't Primaris Terminators,
We need
and would there be able to
details,
be
Lord Inquisitor.
Terminators
I have
that
a
could
terrible
fit
feeling that
Primaris?
keeping us in the dark will reap
and
terrible consequences.
I kind of hand wave that away.
Torix
My
looked
response
he
is
was
like,
about to
yeah,
explode.
it's cool,
He's
why not?
normally calm
There's nothing that
and
says that they can't
evaporated
have them or
as
that they
his
can't
face
be
flushed with
modified.
looked
There
like
are
he was
certainly
about to say
enormous
something.
Space Marines that have
But
to
the
have all of
gears in his head began
their
to
armor
turn.
and stuff modified, so
Gallus hurried himself and Og out of the room.
why not?
There was no reason to learn something that could result in the summary execution of the entire Ogryn squad once the mission was completed.
Anywho,
The
I just there aren't any. Are there Primaris Terminators? Maybe, maybe not.
It is a source of
I just thought it was cool to give them Terminator
I
armor.
cannot tell you anymore.
That is
For
my
your
only
safety
explanation for
And
that.
for the safety of the entire Imperium.
And I didn't think that it was
Cannot tell you.
explicitly forbidden in lore.
But
It's just
we
not
have
mentioned.
received reports that
And there aren't
certain bioforms can
Primaris
feed on such things.
Terminators as far as I
But their
know.
psychic
Like, there
variants
aren't
can
models, I
gain
don't think.
immense power that could even rival, if not dwarf, the most dangerous and powerful psychers that we have ever seen.
So Lorenzo, in his comment
Yeah,
about
he's
diversity,
no
I always paint my
evacuation
models with a
structure.
variety of skin tones.
There is
Whenever
no
people make a
contingency.
comment, I politely
We must
remind them of the
protect
implications
the
of only
source of
having
power
one race coming from a given
falling
planet.
into the Xenos hands. I pray to the Emperor
Yeah.
himself that this information
But
is
one of the
sufficient
things that that is
Sergeant
kind of a
Lazarus was
convention
silent for a
of
moment,
sci-fi
contemplating his
is having
And we are with you, Inquisitor.
monocultural
We will
planets
take
or
this
having
mission in the name of the
a
Emperor.
monobiome in a
And in
planet.
the
'Cause it's
name
like,
of
it's like, all right,
Sanguinius.
what is Catachan? Catachan
Og
is
and Gallus returned to the
space
other
Vietnam, and it's all
new
jungles,
bonehead
all of
hadn't
it,
spent
every
too much
single
time
inch of
with
it's
the new
jungle.
squad.
That's not realistic, but
The Fulgrim
Catachan
seemed
is meant
fairly
to
easy
represent a
work with.
specific thing.
They
It's
were
meant
kind
to
of
be
simple
like
compared to the
Americans
old
in
squad.
American
Gallus had always
special
been encouraging
operations in
curiosity
Vietnam.
and patiently
Tough
asked
as
questions,
nails,
no matter
kind of
how many
cowboy,
times they were asked.
Rambo types.
These Ogrins were a lot less
Tallarn is supposed to represent
They
a
were
specific
trained
culture,
to do their job,
a
and that
specific
is
group of
what they
people.
did.
Same thing with
Og
Attila
was used to
and
putting on
also
his own flak armor.
the White Scars.
But
They're
a bunch
supposed to
of people
represent a
ran
specific
around the
type
Ogrins with
of
step
culture.
ladders and fitted them all with
I sort of,
Ogryn carapace
I know where you're kind of
Og
coming from,
tried
where
to
it's like
take
if there's
things
only
to
one
how
race
they
on a
were putting it
planet,
on.
clearly there
was
must
so
have been
complicated.
like
He quickly became
everyone that
content
wasn't
he
this
didn't
one
have to
race
remember
must
how
have been
to
like
do all of this right
eliminated,
now.
or
Eventually,
something equally as
Og
bad.
was handed his slab shield and
But
power
as far as
ball.
I'm concerned,
The hulking
having
bonehead
kind of
carried
monocultures
all
on a
this
planet
extra
is just
weight
kind of a
with him.
sci-fi
But
thing.
encased in this shell,
It is what they do
carrying
in
his
Star
weapon and
Wars.
shield,
In Star
Og
Wars, you
felt
have
bigger
this is a
than
forest
ever.
planet. This is an
There
ice
was
planet.
no way
this
that
is
the
this
bad
planet.
bugs were going
This is
to
a desert
get
planet.
the special thing
And
the
everyone
Emperor
kind
needed
of looks the
protected.
same.
Og looked over to Gallus.
And everyone from this
Normally,
one planet all
commissars
kind
were
of looks the
outfitted
same.
with carapace
So
breastplates.
that's just what
But
I'm
for
going
this
off
mission,
of.
Gallus was given
40K
a
tends
full body
to
set, complete
take a
with
planet,
rebreather.
and when you're
Og thought he looked a bit like
deciding
the
what
commissars
this
for the
planet's going to
no-face
be,
men
they
from the
usually
battle
pick a
before.
culture
The armor was designed to
from the real
accommodate
world,
Gallus's
and
hat,
then
so that way the Ogrins
plop
could
it
still
into
recognize who their commander
space
was.
and give them the whole planet.
Eventually, the Ogrins were prepared, and they began
And
moving
I'm
up.
sure that there's no problem
Gallus
with like
guiding
having a more
Og where
diverse
to go,
uh,
and then the Bonehead
planet,
providing the marching
but
orders.
most of
Go
40K has.
forward. Now
You
this
have a
way.
culture, you get a planet.
Og pointed his power maul like a baton in the direction he wanted the Bulgrins to march. They took to his orders quickly. Eventually, the Ogrins arrived at the dropship and embarked inside. It wasn't the same as a Chimera, or any of the other transports they had to get inside before. The big belly of the aircraft didn't set off the Ogrins' claustrophobia as badly. Also, the Auspex on the Bulgrin helmets made everything look funny and green. But things didn't look dark.
Somebody corrected me on like what Auspex were, because they're not like night vision. I thought Auspex was a general term for any kind of sensors, or like literally anything that helped you visually. They're like sensors. They're kind of this weird catch-all, or at least they're not used. It's not clear how they're used in specifics. But I couldn't find the Warhammer word for night vision goggles, and there is some word for it. I don't remember what it is. But apparently Auspex was not correct.
Which one was Lazarus? The huge ramp closed behind them. They were on their way now. As the engines roared to life, the dropship began to shake. Everyone grabbed onto their guardrails.
Yeah, I don't mind having a planet that is relatively diverse of regular humans. But I also don't mind if you are,
hanging over the heads of everyone, save the Ogrins.
If you want to put Egyptians in space, that the people who are on that planet look like Egyptians. If you want to take the Zulus and put the Zulus into space, I don't mind that they all look like Zulus.
All my comrades as well. Thank you all for watching this week's installment of Og the Ogryn. If you like what you saw, I would be grateful if you could give the video a like and comment your thoughts below.
Well, I know that the giving someone a gene seed changes their genetic makeup.
Everyone's been talking.
Wrong thing. I wanted to click that. Alright, so we now have Og the Ogryn and the Bumpy Ride.
Hawk gunship screamed towards its destination. It was a long journey.
So this, if it is I think this is the episode where
only thing that could be heard was the drone of the engine.
Dale falls out of the
messages from the pilot providing
the dropship, and hold on, I'm gonna go deal with the dogs. I'll be back.
A last stand defending some powerful psychic artifact.
Hey.
However, the Emperor's Space Marines knew no fear, and the Ogrins were generally not intelligent enough to experience anticipation or anxiety. Og was mostly eager to try out his new power maul on the bad bugs he would face. Commissar Gallus gathered himself. He was a 12-year veteran of numerous campaigns, but he still had to contend with the fears and anxieties of being a mortal man on the eve of battle. He prayed to the Emperor for strength. Below the vessel, guard battle formations marched forward. The columns of men and machines became more numerous and dense as they drew near to the ancient city of Lupercalia. Occasionally, squads of Imperial Knights marched inexorably forward to face the tyrannic.
Wow. Yo, sorry about that.
In the distance, the dark, billowing clouds of smoke foretold of a monumental battle taking place. The previous engagements were dwarfed by the scale of this one. The Tyranids had focused the bulk of their forces here, choosing to secure the continent and assault Lupercalia itself.
Yeah, I
Other
think
offensives
when it
were
comes
simply
to
designed to
design
hide Imperial
in
resources, while
Imperial
they
stuff,
isolated their true
it's
target.
it's
However,
very industrial
the new
looking. They're
offensive
kind of
led by the
big, blocky, and
Custodians was
ugly.
making rapid
Um,
progress.
it's also very
As the
inspired,
Thunderhawk
again,
drew
by
near to the
World War
battle,
II sort
the
of
sound of
stuff.
explosions and the
So you have like these
cacophony of
big
war could be
engines that are
heard
on the
over
side.
sounds of the
They're not
engines
like propeller
as
engines, but
millions
they
of
are.
humans in
They're like
bioforms
big
died
old
beneath
jet
them.
engines.
There was a strange haze that seemed to hang over the battlefield, with large shapes moving through the strange fog. As the pilot drew closer, he could see that the haze was in fact
Yeah,
a swarm
becoming a
of
space
gargoyles
marine,
and
yeah.
hive crones, with
Because
several
because
Harridan
a lot of
biotitans
the Space
circling
Marines
high
end up
above the
looking
battlefield,
more
content to
like
let their smaller brethren
the
wear down
Primarch,
Imperial forces
but not
until they saw
completely,
suitable
and not
high-value
all of them.
targets they could
Because I
swoop
know
down.
that the Raven Guard
The
get
pilot
really
of the
pale.
Thunderhawk was a death-tossed
The
Marine who
Salamanders
calmly and skillfully skirted the edges of the
get
swarm,
jet
waiting
black,
for the
but I
best
don't
moment
think
to make
all
his
of
desperate attempt to force his way
I
through
don't
the
think
mass of
the
winged bioforms.
Thousand
The pilot
Suns. I
called
don't
back
think they
another
all turn
series of
red like
coordinates.
Magnus, and I
Inquisitor
don't
Torres
think.
was quick in relaying the information with
I
his
think
own
there was a
Vox
comic
blaster.
that came out that depicted
Inquisitorial order Invictus 3,
an Ultramarine of African descent.
Confirmation Omicron Delta Epsilon.
After a pause, the
So
Vox
like
crackled to
it
life.
depends on what the you generally do change your appearance, but not entirely, and it depends on what your Primarch is and what their gene seed's like.
Lord Inquisitor. Imperator Kurush. There was another pause before suddenly the skies burst with flak as inky black clouds erupted in the midst of the Tyranid swarm. The Hydra tanks of the 104th raked through the teeming mass of bioforms, creating a narrow corridor for the Thunderhawk to pass through. The pilot throttled the engine and the transport plunged into the smoky cover.
Got a
provided by the
donation
flak.
from Lorenzo.
The turbulence
Only
was
had a few
intense.
minutes to stop by. Thanks for answering my earlier comment, by the way. The term you're referring to is the land of plant of hats trope. Oh, planet of hats. Yeah, no, that's. I don't hate the trope if that's like the way your universe works.
Still,
and when coming up with a planet,
the cover from the Thunderhawk. Once the Tyranids had
it's very difficult to come up with a complete world when you have millions, potentially millions of worlds.
The Thunderhawk roared into use, shredding the endless hordes of gargoyles as their bioweapons peppered the heavily armored hull of the Thunderhawk. The ship cannon and the two mounted las cannons were of little use against such small enemies. The ship began to rock more violently as gargoyles spattered against it. Some of the things were able to land on the Thunderhawk itself, but were quickly ripped apart by the heavy bolters. There was a loud crash as one of the flying bioforms crashed directly into the right vehicle engine. The lights in the cargo hold flickered, and the Lamenters and Ogryns were suddenly bathed in the red emergency light. More cracks, splatters, and crashes.
So yeah, this particular action sequence, again, I tried to make the battles and action of this series as varied as possible. And so, you know, we had a pretty normal pitched battle. We had the battle at Dawn Citadel, which was set up a little bit different. They're trying to advance instead of luring them into a trap and then fighting them in this one location. And in here, I think this is a lot different, where you're
horrid screeches they
like I think there's a lot of importance in variety, even if it's like
in on the transport. The pilot
like, you know, they're in an airborne vehicle, and they're trying to get to a certain point in order to drop kind of their strike team to get to a certain place.
In and out of the spires jutting out from the metropolis below. Some of the missiles struck the buildings. A few managed to stay on target, streaking towards the Thunderhawk. The pilot pulled up rapidly.
So I just am of the opinion that even if you don't really know what to do, you just want to avoid sameness. You don't want.
They struck the craft in the rear, tearing open the drop ramp and sending the Thunderhawk tumbling.
Even if you like don't have much else going for a scene, having it just be different from previous scenes is helpful.
Lost his footing and instinctively put his arms out to cushion his fall, letting go of the rail. The poor Ogryn tumbled out of the back of the ship into the smoke below. Shrapnel ricocheted around
So that's
the hole,
Dale.
but this was nothing to the heavily
Dale the
armored
Bulgrin
Bullgryns
actually
and
has
Lamenters.
his own
The pilot
part of his
had
own
climbed
series.
up deliberately just to get a bit more altitude.
Who's it
as
by?
they began to fall towards Lupercalia.
I'm not going to go look it up at the moment
The
because
engines were dead now.
currently my
All that
internet
could be done
window
now
is the
was to
thing that
glide the Thunderhawk as close as they
we're
could
watching.
get to the target
But there
landing
is
area.
a partial
With the drop
Dale the
ramp gone,
Bulgrin
the
story,
Lamenters
which
opened fire
Dale
with their
survives
storm bolters at the
and
trailing
then has
hive
other
drones.
adventures.
10 of the Terminators
Oh, gotta
were
head to work,
outfitted
but
with
take care,
long-range
everyone.
weapons,
Iron Within.
while
Oh,
others were equipped for melee.
we got one of
Whatever
the
Tyranids were
one of
expecting when
them
they
Iron
attacked,
Warrior types.
They did not anticipate the sheer volume of firepower pouring out of the cargo hold of this ship. The first hive crone was
Diversity of
positively
battlefields,
engulfed in
ground,
bolter
air,
fire,
underground.
ripping the large
Only thing
bioform to
missing
shreds.
is a naval battle, but that was
The other
covered in
tried
Heart of
to
Iron.
peel
Yep.
away, but an assault cannon
there's not a whole
raked
lot of
across the winged creature, tearing it to pieces.
The function of a navy doesn't really
The
make
enemies
sense in
destroyed the
Warhammer
Lamenters and Ogryns prepared for a crash
because
landing.
you have spaceships.
They were past the main lines
If you have
now.
spaceships, they're gonna
Most of the
serve the
Tyranids were
function
engaged at the front. There were no vast swarms here that they could see.
Ocean-going vessels.
Deep in the heart of Lupercalia was likely a different.
And if you don't have
Pilot dipped the
void
nose of the
superiority,
Thunderhawk and pulled up at the
you're not
last
going to be
second
able to
in an
cross
effort
oceans
to slow
anyway.
down their forward momentum as much as possible.
Whether you have
With
a
this final
spaceship
act,
or
the
a
belly of the ship slammed into Lupercalia,
ocean-going vessel.
sparks spraying out from underneath her. This was hardly a landing pad, and the rough, battle-torn causeway that they landed on caused the Thunderhawk to wobble and pitch.
Stupid causeway and
As
cause.
she shook, her wings struck the ground, tearing them free, causing the ship
I still
to
do
pitch
it.
over
I
to
still
the other
find
side and tearing off the other
it
wing.
is like my own
She then
self
slammed
nitpick,
over
which
onto
is
her
I
side
repeat
before
words
finally sliding
in
to a halt
descriptions.
about 100 meters from the drop zone. They had made it. Now, they had to fight their way to the target and defend it.
Alright, we're actually getting to the end of the series. We have 3 more episodes,
No
one of
man
which
did
is
they call
very,
me.
very long.
My mother and my father, and all my comrades as well. Hey everybody.
I'm going to silence myself from blabbering. But yeah, I did... Oh, okay. This is one where the series is out of order. So I'm going to skip over to 17. Let me just skip over to this one, and then I'm going to go back to 18.
Rose from the crash-landed... Smoke rose from the crash-landed Thunderhawk as the Lamenters promptly launched into action, attempting to secure the perimeter.
Hope you guys are having fun. Like,
The
I hope this
Ogryns
is
were a little
interesting
more
to hear my... And if
disoriented
you have
and
any questions,
Commissar
feel free
Gallus
to ask
himself
me
needed
about
to
the...
take a moment to sort himself out. He had anchored himself to the deck floor with his augmetic legs, but during the flight, he had to be careful he wasn't smashed beneath a ton or two of Ogryn. Sergeant Lazarus spared a moment to look back at the Ogryns, but turned and quickly joined the other space marines.
But one of the things I guess I
Gallus
would
grunted as he loosened
say
the clamps holding
about
his legs in place.
Og the Ogryn in general,
If you would
and,
do the
and my
honors and
work
get the
in
lads
general
organized.
is...
We need to move out now.
It is ultimately a chance for me to kind of play in the world of Warhammer 40k, to think about all the different forces that are at the Imperium's disposal.
To make sure they
how do you
had
make
their
them
power
work together in a way that's
and they hadn't been
interesting?
lost in the flight.
We also have like lots of
After a
different
slight
characters.
delay,
We have
the
Inquisitor
Ogryns marched out
Torix
to
and
join the
Sergeant
Lamenters,
Lazarus
who were
and Og
engaged in a
and
firefight with
Fletcher
scattered
and
Tyranid
Biff
units.
and you have all these different
Lazarus
guys.
called out to Gallus.
And
We
one of
don't
the
have
things I've
much
always
time
hoped
before the
when it
swarm
comes
gets
to Og the
organized and
Ogryn
reacts to
is
our
that
presence.
people
We need
take
to march
inspiration from
now.
Og
As the
and
Bullgryns
like
marched
want
out of the
to
cargo
make
hold,
their own
Gallus was
things.
happy to see that the pilot had emerged safely as well, carrying a Space Marine pattern sniper rifle. Inquisitor Torix and
That's
his
what I
retinue
always
were
want.
also
It's like
outside
whenever
the
people
wreck,
make
moving
their
towards the
own
gate.
stuff,
Resistance was
if
light
it's based on
at the
my
moment.
stuff or if they
Gaunt
are
and
inspired to
gene
like
stealers and
make their own
lictors were
audio
lurking about.
stories, like that makes me
To
happy.
avoid ambushes, the detachment moved
Because I
out
like
in the
inspiring
open.
more
If
creativity.
a large force was brought against them, they would be overwhelmed.
Grave Boila is
The
returned.
likelihood
Welcome back.
that the Tyranid stealth units could surprise them was next to nil. The grandeur
Alright,
of the
you guys can
ancient city
inform
was
Grave
still
Boil and what's been
recognizable.
happening. Go ahead and
Even to the
summarize everything
simple-minded
that's been
Ogryn.
going on at Og the Ogryn so far.
The towering statues still stood. The golden edifices still towered over the landscapes. The great stone reliefs still depicted the ancient victories of the Great Crusade. The Imperial force made its way down a grand causeway towards the entrance to the depths of Lupercalia and their eventual target. A group of termagants.
Pretty sure that's a picture of Necromunda that I'm using for Lupercalia.
Firing their cruel weapons
but
and then
if you ever, it's actually kind of hard to get depictions of hive cities that aren't Necromunda.
Their goal seemed to be to slow them down.
Like to get the big picture.
These tactics can only mean
like
there must
it's
be some
kind of
kind
difficult to
synapse
find
nearby.
Places that aren't
the Bulgrins
Necromunda.
locked their slab shields as they marched forward, and Gallus had them moving double time. They protected the inquisitorial retinue as the Lamenters moved out along.
At some point, I want to.
The gaunts would pop up, fire, and then retreat.
I want to learn a little bit more about Necromunda because I know it's a game. I know a little bit about the setting.
But little or no effect.
I know a little bit about the
Marines
gangs.
were usually able to pick off one or two of them,
but I kind of want to
slink
learn
again
a
out
little
of
bit more
sight.
about it.
Just as the pattern became
I know
so
it's a big
obvious,
hive city, and like
Og was
everything
beginning to
outside of the hive
anticipate
is
the short hit-and-run
like a
pattern.
wasteland.
Suddenly,
But
a large number of termagants and
if
hormagaunts
I want to look into it,
because
because either it
began
might
to
inspire
pour
me to
into
do a
the flanks,
Necromunda story,
digging around the
or
Bulgrim
I might
shield
take
wall.
ideas from Necromunda
However,
and kind of piece
bringing
together
such
into
weapons
something
to
else.
bear against the near invulnerable Terminators was still not terribly effective. The heavy weapons of the Terminators roared to life, tearing through chitin and spattering ichor across the causeway. The close combat Hormagaunts used their ranged brethren as a shield to get close in, but the sheer firepower of the Terminators, the walking weapon platforms that they were, tore through them like butter. It was at this moment that the true plan of the Tyranids revealed itself. With the Terminators occupied, a massive bioform emerged from an alleyway leading onto the causeway. It was a lumbering creature with a sort of bloated appearance, with a huge, bulging flesh sac hanging beneath it. Gaunts of all kinds seemed to be emerging from it, as if it were birthing or spawning them.
It is a Tervagon, a brood creature. Kill it!
The swarm of Gaunts slammed against the Bulgrin shield wall, and the Ogrins went to work.
For the Emperor!
I'm gonna be honest. I had kind of forgotten about this encounter outside of
the
fortress before they actually get in and do the
the
underground fight.
Battle. Blasts
It's kind of a
acid
minor
and bioweapons
encounter,
sprayed
but like
across their lines. But between
I
the
kind of
slab
wanted to
shields,
have
the
a
carapace
scene
armor, and
where
the fact that Ogryn's
you got
skin
to see how
was thick enough to
badass
stop most
the
auto-weapons,
Terminators were.
The Tyranid bioweapons were of little effect. The towering Tervagon was another matter. If that massive creature hit the shield wall, its sheer size and power could drive through them and into the Inquisitor. As the creature picked up steam, Og prepared to receive it. The Ogryn bonehead
this is kind of a
apart
chance
the
to
that
let
scurried around
characters
his
show
feet.
off how
As
much
he
they've
cleared
grown.
them away, crushing them with his
To show off
crackling
also
power
like
maul,
the cool
the
gear everyone
Tervagon
has.
plowed into him. Og roared in defiance as he dug his
Okay, so
feet
one of the
into
things that I
ground.
think is
He
important
slid
about a
back from
setting
the
like
impact as his shield buckled beneath the
Warhammer
weight of the
40k
Tervagon.
or like Star
The other
Wars or Star
Ogryn
Trek,
flanking Og
one of the
flung
things
to the
that's very
side,
fun
smashing into the ground with
is
incredible
the
force.
kind of enjoyment you
The
get
grasping
from like when you're a
blade-like
little
limbs of the
kid
Tervagon
and you have
struggled
like
to
your
reach
action
around
figures
Og's shield and pierce
and
the Ogryn.
you are
And
setting them
Og
all up and like
stood
having these
firm
big
and
battles.
swung
And
his power maul at the horrid
I mean that's what 40k
creature.
is.
As
It's
he
a
struck
tabletop
it,
game.
The foul sack burst open like an overripe
And
fruit.
kind of creating the
half-formed
feeling of
fetal gaunts
getting out your
poured
toys and playing with them,
Tervagon let
like
out a
that
piercing
joyful feeling you
screech,
had when you were a
and
kid.
Og prepared to charge it again.
I really like
but he
trying to
felt
get that
a hand
across in
touch
the
his
action
elbow.
sequences I have.
Monsieur Og, if you would kindly lower your head, please.
You know, you
Ogryn
want your
obeyed
guys to
and
do
immediately
cool
dropped
stuff,
to his
so
knee, keeping the
you have them
shield
do
in front
cool
of
stuff.
him. Inquisitor Tolix calmly stepped forward and fired his melta pistol over his head. The blast from the weapon engulfed the Tervagon with temperatures that would match the searing heat of magma. The beam of the Inferno pistol struck the creature in the head, and it immediately turned to ash as the rest of the body burst into flames. Og felt like he was baking in his armor from the intense heat that emanated from the creature. Then Og
Melta weapons
felt
are
a funny
absurd. Like
kind
some of
pressure
the
on his
weaponry
head,
that
as there
exists
was
in
another strange
Warhammer
sound.
is just
that funny
like
ringing you get in your ears
this thing is
sometimes.
redonkulous.
The
There's
remaining
nothing
gaunts
like there's
began
nothing
to
that
twitch
withstands
and
this
convulse as
thing.
the strange
There's a
beating
lot of
sound
that,
continued.
which kind
The
of
heads of the
it
remaining
weirdly like
minor
undercuts armor for me.
ruptured as the psychic
Like you
backlash
have
from the death of the Tervagon
you have
destroyed its
Terminators
brood as well.
and you have all these
Gallus
different
quickly
guys that
reorganized the
have this
blueprints after
crazy
the storm.
crazy armor.
There were some bumps,
But you also have like
bruises, and cuts,
a lot
but no
of
serious
armor
injuries.
penetrating
Though
weapons
some of the
that
Ogryns had received
either
some
ignore
damage to
armor
their
because they're
armor
power
shields.
weapons or greatly reduce the
Imperial
effectiveness
force
of armor.
continued along the causeway without further major incident.
So like the melted
Remaining
guns are just
encounters were
so
with lesser, more bestial
crazy.
bioforms that did not attack in any kind of organized manner. It was not long before they finally reached the entrance to the citadel they sought. Dolhix walked forward and began entering an access code to open the massive, sliding metal doors. I will make certain that this door will not open for the Xenos once we are through.
Yeah, and for anybody,
From
I
here,
think most people
we
have
must take
figured
the
it out,
maglift
but
down into deep
the
Lucalia.
reference for
From that point on,
Inquisitor
we will be
Torix,
walking
as
in
far
the
as his name
sacred
goes,
steps of the
is
Emperor and his sons.
Versin
If the
Getorix,
legends are true.
or
You're
in
sure
French
it's
is
wise to take a
Versin
maglift while the enemy
Getorix,
has so much control over the city. What
who
happens if we're
was
trapped?
the Celtic.
As much as I am loath to put ourselves in such a
I don't remember
vulnerable
when he was. I don't know if he was the
position,
warlord
marching
that
all the way
Caesar
down
ended up
to
fighting
Arcana
against.
will likely take too long.
I forget,
I
but
think
he's like
the
a Gallic
Inquisitor is right. This might be a
guy.
risk we have to take.
With that, the gates opened, and the air from within still smelled of incense, and there was a feeling of age and weight and gravitas that came over the Imperial forces as they entered the sacred city. Torix grinned. Let us pray to the Emperor that the machine spirit remains a good and loyal servant of man. Welcome to Lupercalia, my friends.
Alright,
It
so
is here
after
that we
this,
shall write our legend, or die in ignominy. No man do they call me.
alright, let's back
My
up
mother and my father,
to up
and all
here.
my-
Apologies for ad.
Lupercalia was vast and ornate. The interior of Lupercalia was vast and ornate. Commissar Gallus and Og had never been to Terra, but Inquisitor Torix and Sergeant Lazarus had spent time in the Imperial Palace. The similarities were quite eerie. Both were monuments. One,
I figured it was a reference that's
monument
pretty
to
on
hopes and
par
dreams
with
of mankind.
what
but here, instead of a monument to
With,
past glories, this
what
place
40K
was a
tends to
monument
do.
eternal penitence. All of the depictions of the Emperor's traitorous sons were gilded or painted over to depict grand tableaus dedicated
I think one of the
to
interesting
warning of their
things,
hubris.
somebody did a
How
breakdown
beings
of
so great and powerful could still succumb to temptation.
the Krieger uniform,
In place
because
of
somebody was
mosaics of the
saying
Emperor
that the Krieger
gloriously
were
leading
like,
the crusade, there were
you know,
stylized depictions of demons and traitor marines
1940s
tormenting
Germany.
mankind.
I know you're not supposed to say the name, which I think is silly. It's like Voldemort
Keep
or
your
something.
mind focused on the Emperor's will, Bonehead Og.
Yes, sir, Mr. Marine, sir. Protect the special thingy.
But
This way.
we got a little bit of time. There's some more stuff, but
As he did so,
when there was a breakdown of like the Krieger uniform, and somebody was like, "This is 1940s Germany," and somebody did a breakdown of like every single aspect of the uniform and what, because it's like the helmet is German, is German, but it has a crest like the French helmet. The little bump on the top is like a crest like the French helmet has. The gas mask I think is French. The coat is different. Like they're all, every single piece of their uniform is like from a different World War I army, because the point of Krieg is less to be German, even though, you know, Krieg is a German word, that it is more that they are like World War I planet.
and many of them were misshapen with hunched forms. One, who appeared to be their leader, stood a bit straighter and carried a staff of office bearing the imperial aquila, though the two heads of the eagle were covered in a black shroud.
I don't want to go wax too poetically on
mouth, eyes,
The base of his skull and his
I don't think
appeared
anything
to be similar to those utilized by the Sisters Repentia,
should be
who sought
impossible to
forgiveness in the
talk
eyes of
about.
the Emperor as they used neurostimulators
Yeah, I would agree with
to
Eric on
their
this one.
sin
It is
by
ridiculous to
suffering
give
in the Emperor's
words or
name,
names
a
such
physical
power.
reminder of the sins
Um,
burdening their souls.
And it probably doesn't matter for a stream,
The penitent's
because for
manner
streams I
usually
don't make
graceful and formal.
anything in the way of
But
money
all
from
the
people
muscles
watching
in
it.
his
I get
face and
money
arms were
from
taut
people
and clear.
donating, so
If you wish to
I probably
come,
could
walk in
use
front of us where we can see you all.
the naughty
We cannot
word,
be delayed in our purpose. The leader nodded to
but
his
I'm just not
subordinates,
gonna.
and they all began shuffling
I'm not
ahead
gonna
with
risk it.
Ogrins and Marines, carrying their ornately patterned weapons. Most carried las weapons.
And I think there's other. I think the bigger one, like,
It is not my intent to delay you, my lords.
I don't know. I think it's just dumb. Like, it's a historical thing. Like, it's a thing that happened, and you should be able to talk about it.
Traitors sent here to repent for the ills you have done.
Yes. We are the descendants of the few chapter serfs that served the traitor legions during the heresy. The vast majority of our kind were lost to the ancient enemies, their souls forever lost. Upon seeing the ruination of Molech and the entire Imperium, we have taken on the sins of our forefathers, so that one day, the foul taint of the great betrayal may one day be...
Do you know what this is? This is a little bit of a funny thing. I was worried. I was worried that I was going to be pinged. I don't think it was. I wasn't a real fear, but it was a thing I thought about. Was in the Heart of Iron series, if I was ever going to be pinged because I used the word Ashkenazi, which has the not nice word in it, which is a little ironic given that it is the name for Germanic Jews. Or I think it's Frankish. They're originally Frankish, but it's they're a Germanic group. I forget. I don't remember. I am.
We must reach our target.
I am not sure.
That'd be like that would be the peak of it. I think that would bring it down if YouTube were to ping me for saying Ashkenazi. It'd be like, no, you can't use that word.
We stopped dealing with a mass incursion. Now we've been hunted by the lurking creatures the swarm left behind. As far as aiding you in this matter, it is with great regret that I may only give my life once for the Emperor. I shall gather what brothers I can.
I felt like I didn't want to. I had a
as we are able.
This sort of cult that existed here. I kind of felt like I wanted to have them add some depth to Lupercalia and like why it was the way it was. And I think it does explain some things, but I also didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on them. It's because I think it would have been like weird exposition. Like they already did do a fair amount of exposition explaining who they were, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to get sidetracked on talking a lot about them.
Industrial mag lift. Even for a machine that was typically designed only for utility, the heavy gold-plated doors were covered with ornate etchings of the nightmare of the Horus Heresy. Stylized mutilated corpses, skulls, and fire adorned it. Inquisitor Torix quickly entered another access code, but it failed to comply. A tech priest and his retinue came forth to calm the machine spirit and burn holy incense and apply the sacred blessed oils to soothe and lift it into compliance. As the ritual went on, they could hear the crack of las fire behind them. The brothers were causing the delay. The Marines and Ogrins had the strength to withstand most of what the swarm could throw at them, but they couldn't afford to get bogged down in an extended fight. Gallus looked from the tech priest to the sounds of battle behind them. He could hear the piercing shrieks of the Tyranids as combat ensued. As it continued, he could hear the rate of fire begin to slow.
One of the things I've noticed about my stories is there's a lot of going down into the underhives of things.
His final benediction, and the machine spirit
and I don't really know. The problem is, it's like because Auga's going to go down into the Underhive to go at some point. Like the Tin King is down in the Underhive in Polis. And there have been just a number of times where things have been down in the Underhive. Another time in Kazazel's Merry Marauders. And it's like, is it always going down into the Underhive? But kind of the thing is, it's like, well, if it's not in the Underhive, where is it? And why is it not? It's like, if you need to have something that's forgotten in secret, it kind of needs to be in the Underhive. It's like... Forgotten, forbidden secret things are in Underhives, or they're on Space Hulks.
That was only lit by the occasional glow of an incense stick became a sea of green.
Oh, another minor thing. Somebody thought that they would encounter gene stealers. And the thing about gene stealers is you need a long time for gene stealers to get seeded into a planet. Because we'll have gene stealers landed here. There's going to be gene stealers in this Underhive area. Well, in order for gene stealers to happen, gene stealers need to land on the planet, and then they need to, using the reproductive cycle of humans, they make more of their own kind, and they make Tyranid human hybrids, which slowly build up in number. And that takes kind of generations to do. It takes a while to get a gene stealer population up. So to go from the gene stealers arrive to there is now a sizable population of gene stealer cultists, that's like several generations of work. So in the way I had this play out, there just weren't... Alright, I'm going to skip to 19. But the way I had this kind of play out, I was like, no, they didn't send gene stealers ahead of time. They just hadn't. It just wasn't what my mind had what I had in mind. They were making a big assault on the area, not sending gene stealers. Alright, here we go. We got 2 more to go, and then...
To be a man in such times is to be one amongst untold billions.
I really like this Ogryn art, by the way.
Beings is of utterly no consequence to the Imperium of man. Almost all live.
I wish there was a little bit more Ogryn art. There's some fan art, but usually when it's fan art, it tends to be something that's kind of comical and silly.
Bereft of meaning, toiling in factorums until they no longer
or like
can.
Cute comics.
It is rare.
But like as far as something that would be appropriate to use for Og the Ogryn,
have consequences for so many.
It's a little limited.
That individuals find themselves.
As Ibian points out, where else do you find Underhive scum? Well, in the Underhive.
Og had absolutely no appreciation for the magnitude of his situation. As smart as he was only dimly aware that this was a special kind of job. And while the Astartes were steeling their nerves for the conflict ahead, the Ogryns were mostly occupied with keeping themselves from getting bored. Commissar Gallus and Bonehead Og took the Bulgrins through their paces, checking equipment and making sure everything was in working order, and securing pieces of armor that had been damaged or loosened in the fighting with the Gene Stealers and Lictors.
I sort of remember doing this particular episode.
Every sound Gallus made. The place was so immense that the echoes continued to bounce.
I think what I wanted to do was have literally a break, because it was action, all the way up to now, and it's like I want to take a breath before, the calm before the storm. I wanted to kind of reset everyone's action meters, because if you have action, it overloads you. It just gets to be too much, and you get desensitized to it.
The Tyranids could not be allowed to get their claws on. Before them were 4 grand ancient hallways that came together. Unlike the portions of the city close to the surface,
I feel like I didn't
taken care of by
quite
penitents,
describe
this portion of the catacombs had no
as well as I could have.
And the style was
Of where
distinct
things
from the
were, or
Gothic
like I could have made it
cathedrals that were
the
ubiquitous
landscape a
across
little bit
the
more
Imperium.
interesting.
As the Ogrins continued their drills,
But I think it worked
and
fine.
saw to some
Like,
minor weapons maintenance,
I think it was alright.
Sergeant Lazarus perked up. He could hear footsteps coming down the hall from what must have been the inner sanctum, the place where the asset was supposedly housed.
Someone's coming. 2 people by the sound of it, one much larger than the other.
Inquisitor Torek smiled to himself. I have my suspicions as to their identities. Still, we should make ourselves presentable. Gallus nodded. Ogrins, kneeling shield line.
Then point that way.
The Ogrins fell into line and formed their shield wall. The Lamenter Terminators came up behind them, leveling their weapons at the darkness. Emerging out of the shadows were 2 figures. The first was unmistakably one of the gold-clad custodies. Ogg's eyes opened wide at seeing such a figure up close and in person. He had previously only seen a glimpse of these warriors, and at the time he was losing
I kind of
Even
wish there
with
was
their
more stuff
tactical
about the
dreadnought
Sisters
armor,
of Silence.
the Custodies
Like, we're getting
still
things
stood
with the Custodies,
taller
but I
than
kind
any
of
the gathered
liked
Primaris.
the idea
One of
of
the Adeptus
the
Custodies,
Sisters of Silence
a
being
being that had lived and fought alongside the Emperor himself,
complementary units that worked
gleaming
with the
halberd in
Custodies.
hand,
And that the
stood
Custodies were
before the
like
assembled force,
so mentally tough that they
while the
could
Custodies
stand being
evoked
around the
the
Sisters
glory
of Silence.
being handcrafted by the Emperor himself. His companion evoked a very different feeling. She was much smaller. Taller perhaps than the average human female, but still shorter than even Commissar Gallus. But there was something about her that caused a kind of unease to seep into the ranks of the Ogrins and Space
I think it
Marines.
might have understated like
And she moved like a
the
warrior.
the
Very
terrible
measured,
feeling it is to be around a Sister of
While the
Silence.
Custodies was the hopeful shining light of the Emperor.
But I also didn't want
The woman who accompanied him
to have that
was
overwhelm the
callous
story.
ruthlessness
Um,
and suffering that was
That
underlying
it's like I don't want to
every
have to
moment of
be
glory.
talking about how everyone feels awful because of the Sister of Silence exists.
I am Shield Captain Actaeon, and this is my counterpart, Sister Commander Abatisa. We heard your arrival.
The Custodies looked over the assembled bulky Terminators and massive Ogrins.
It was not difficult. Explain your presence in this most sacred place.
I am Inquisitor Torix. I'm acting as liaison between Ordo Xenos and Ordo Malleus in a combined effort on this world. The sister commanders seemed to smirk as Torix
Yeah,
announced
I wanted to.
himself.
Yeah.
Combined
So,
effort indeed. The Inquisition, Sub Astra Militarum Auxilia, and the Lamenters. Continue, Inquisitor.
We are here to defend the asset from the Xenos. I have reason to believe that this is their target. This might even be the very reason they selected Molech to invade. The shield captain nodded.
I
Under
think
normal
that the
circumstances, I would have you.
I enjoyed the.
How you came to know about this place is of great concern.
Yeah, like I said, this was
And
kind of
why you felt
a
it was wise to bring
period of
simpletons
time
and
to like take a
accursed
breather into
chapter
introducing
into one of the most
some
sacred
characters,
places the Imperium
kind
is
of leading into the
beyond
final fight.
me.
No one dared say a word, or object to the custodian. Shield Captain Actaeon glanced over to Abatisa, who looked to him, and then at the assembled force before her, before nodding her head.
However,
I was forgetting
our
the
squabbles
custody's
are
name,
secondary.
Shield Captain
If you are here
Actaeon.
to defend the
I was stuck on.
Sanctum
My brain was
Porta,
thinking Agamemnon.
then I will
which is
accept
not
your
his
help.
name.
Abatisa and I will maintain our vigil in the chamber itself. If you are overrun, you may retreat to our position, and we shall fight to the last man if necessary. The Emperor protects.
Everyone echoed the custodian except for his companion, who simply bowed her head. Then, Shield Captain Actaeon,
That's another thing about the Sisters of
Sister Commander
Silence.
Abatisa
I think it is like a
turned and
meme
headed
that
back
they don't
down the
talk,
hallway, the
but I don't
feeling
know
of
if they
unease
actually
slowly
like
fading
have a
away.
vow of silence or never speak,
Well, Og,
or if the
you've managed to
silence
see a
is
custodian
more
and a
that
sister of
they
silence.
silence
can say that they
psychers. Does anybody know if the Sisters of Silence actually don't
We
talk?
were fighting the bad bugs in the big battle. But I lost a lot of blood, and that made me go to sleep for a while.
After the custodian and the Sister of Silence left, the waiting continued. It wasn't clear how long they would have to sit there. Gallus eventually had the Ogrins eat some rations, just to keep them occupied for a little while longer. The Lamenters simply maintained their vigil, unflinching in their determination. Ogrins were very well intentioned, and they were fearless in battle, but they were easily distracted. Even Og was having trouble fending off boredom. As the Ogrins were finishing their meals, another sound came echoing down the hall.
Pretty sure they never talk, but they have some sort
Sounded
of
like it
sign
was
language
coming
or
from
snapping
nearly
fingers or
every
something.
hallway connected
Makes
to the
sense.
section before them. Chittering,
But then the
screeching,
question is, why don't they
scurrying.
talk?
The sounds of
I don't know if it's
thousands
like a
of
religious
claws on
thing
the
or...
ancient stones of this place.
I don't know.
Come on,
I don't know why they wouldn't
Bogwins.
talk.
We got bad bugs to smash.
Gallus and Og quickly got the Bulgrins in order and had them line up in front of the Terminators, kneeling and forming their shield wall as the sounds of the swarm drew closer. The echoes of the place made the sounds of the encroaching horde seem like it was almost a solid wall of undifferentiated noise, like a massive swarm of bees descending down upon them. Og, Gallus, Torix, and Sergeant Lazarus waited.
So you have a theory about
The
it.
storm
As a blank, nobody likes
had
them.
arrived.
On an instinctual level, a silent feels much
No man
more
did they
like...
call me. My mother
Even
and
if
my
she's a
father,
blank.
and
Oh,
all
yeah.
my comrades.
I could see that. Alright, move on to the next one. Okay, I will deal with the terrible ads. And, yep, this will be the last one. With more artwork by good old Eric Rayner, our moderator and artist extraordinaire. Alright, here we go.
Og knelt with his Bulgrins in the front of the Terminator line, their slab shields interlocking. Before him, the screeches and guttural
So I'll talk a
roars of the
little bit
approaching
about,
Tyranid swarm grew louder and louder.
I won't blab too much once the fight
Gallus
kind of
stood
starts
in
and
the
we're
middle
getting to
of
the
two
end.
lines. His
But
head was just about even with the kneeling Ogryn.
one of the things I
He
wanted
held
to
his
talk
bolt
about
pistol and
was
chainsword at the ready. The Death Watch Marine had taken a
why
sniper's position, with the huge vault
why
of
the
ceiling to climb
sequence
the
of
side
events
the stone
happens the way it
effortlessly,
does.
and found a
With
suitable spot
the,
atop an old broken pillar.
the Sanguinor showing up at the end.
Inquisitor
Sanguinor
Torix and his retinue of Tempestus
or
Scions and his lone
know,
tech priest stood in
Sanguinius
the
himself.
back
It isn't really
while
clear, and I
Sergeant
deliberately
Lazarus
made that
and
not
Lamenters
clear.
readied their
Is it
weapons.
the Sanguinor?
A
Is it
flood of
Sanguinius? What
Tyranid seemed to cascade
is it a
around the
spirit? What is he
corner into
doing?
the
I don't
hall.
know.
The
It's not.
sheer number
I'm
of
not
them
answering
was
that question.
impossible to count. They
Um,
clung to the walls
and
and the ceiling. They were
it's
so
like, well, why does
densely
he show
packed
up
it was
then?
difficult to tell the difference between
And
vials.
my
Just
reasoning is
claws.
the reason is that the
Scything limbs and
Sister
cruel
Abatisa is
bioweapons.
there
A volley
because
of
as Sister
fire
of Silence,
erupted from
she
the
prevents
disgusting swarm
psychic
and
phenomenon from
impacted against
happening.
the
So she's
Ogryn
there
flag
guarding
shields.
that portal,
Hold!
so it
Wait
doesn't
until they're closer.
act up
Make
and
each
be
round
crazy.
count, brothers.
As if in response, a lone shot was fired
So
by
when
the Death
she
Watch Marine,
is killed,
catching a Tyranid warrior right between the
that
eyes
stops
as it emerged from the
the
swarm.
protection
With
of
just a fraction of
that
a
stops her
The
repression
bioform
of
tumbled back
of
and
the
was
psychic
immediately
energy stuff.
swallowed by the swarm.
And so
Og's
that
muscles
allows
tensed, and he grinned and waited to be able to
the
smash
Sanguinius
the bad
slash
bug.
the Sanguinor slash
Though he was mad
whatever
with
the
a bunch of
psychic
them were
phenomenon
shooting and
was
climbing
that
over walls
manifested
and
right
ceiling.
there to be able to come
More
through.
blasts from the bioweapons
Because
struck
of
slab
the
shields.
shadow and the warp,
A few struck the helmets of the Terminator.
none of these
glanced
things could happen.
harmlessly
No
off
psychic
their thick
phenomenon,
armor.
like the no
Lazarus narrowed
warp
his
phenomenon
eyes.
could happen
Fire!
because of the shadow and the
Og
warp.
felt like the entire Imperial Guard was behind him, firing every weapon imaginable. Bolter rounds filled.
Yeah, that was
Og's
my
field
my
of
whole
vision.
thing of
It
why
was difficult
that
to
happened
even
when
see
it
what was
happened.
happening.
Is
But the Ogryn Bonehead could feel
essentially-
bits of Tyranid hitting off his arm
yeah,
as they
he
fell
was
from the ceiling. He braced for
kind
the
of waiting
impact
there
he
to
knew would
come help
The
if
bad
things got
bug
bad
slammed
enough.
against his shield, but nothing came.
Huge plumes of burning
but couldn't do so
filled the
because
hallway
of Sister
as
of
the
Battle.
Tyranids continued to press in.
Or Sister
For
of
the
Battle,
moment,
Sister
they
of
were
Silence,
kept at
Silence
range.
Sister.
The
Sisters of
Ogrins
Silence.
and the melee Terminators were getting impatient for their
I've been
chance
blabbing
to
on
still
for
the
over
foul
3
high
hours,
core of
so.
the Xenos. Og thought the Marines were going to have all the fun. But that was when he saw 3 enormous shapes emerge from the horde of Tyranids. Massive Carnifexes lumbered in the hail of bolter fire, their thick, chitinous armor absorbing incredible punishment. They roared and charged the lines. With impossible precision, the Death Watch Marine pulled his trigger twice, and 2 neat holes appeared where the Carnifex's eyes had been. The creature seemed dazed, but then charged.
I enjoy the
forward
Death Watch
blindly into
Marine.
the
Like, I didn't
Ogre
talk
line.
about him yet, but
Og was ready.
he is,
The
again,
Carnifex
another
swiped its claws too early
character
and
who
missed
says
the shield
nothing,
wall completely.
but,
The bonehead
like,
swung his
leaves a mark.
Pall-Mall and
He's
connected
I
with
kind of think of
powerful
him as, like, the Boba Fett
crushing it and
of this
snapping them in
story.
two.
He
The
doesn't say
blind
much,
Carnifex
he's
was
cool,
much
he's
easier to deal
badass,
with. He was
he,
seriously wounded, and
you
the
know,
other Ogrins moved in to dispatch
upholds
it,
the
crushing
badassery
it.
of
The other
the group that
Carnifexes
he's a
were
part
much
of,
more able to
and that's
act
all
as
he needs to
line
do.
breakers, crashing into the Ogrins. One Bulgrin by the name of Charlie saw the creature stab right through his shield and into his arm. These creatures were able to rip tanks apart with their claws. Even the thick armor of the Imperial forces were not immune to the heavy hitting power of the Carnifexes. The creature pulled Charlie off his feet and flung him back into the swarm, where he vanished into the pile of Xenos.
F for
Og
Charlie.
saw Charlie's fists punching the little ones as best he could.
Can we get some F's in chat
but
for
it wasn't long
Charlie?
before he could see nothing at all. Once the initial impact from the Fexes was absorbed, the Bulgrins with their mighty power weapons began to crack the shells of these creatures. The Lamenter Terminators pushed forward as well, bringing their lightning claws to bear. Just as the Carnifex could pierce through thick armor, so could the power weapons of the Imperial defenders. The Tyranids flailed and knocked over a few Ogrins from their feet, but they were beaten and slashed to pieces in quick order as the melee ensued. The back line began to focus on the bioforms that were creeping above. Inquisitor Torix was picking out large targets of value and making liberal use of his melta pistol to turn the powerful bioforms into ashen carbon. The melee was a blur. Og smashed and bashed every bad bug he could find. The fight seemed to drag on for an eternity. Many of the Ogrins were injured in the fighting. A few more died trying to push back the seemingly endless tide of bugs. Doug, Seth, Butch, they had all gone to the Emperor's house. Og hoped they would be good company for Fletcher and Biff. Og himself had already sustained a pretty good beating. The corner of his slab shield had been hacked off, acid had eaten through his armor on his flesh arm and given him a good burn. But the pain was good. It helped Og stay angry. Gallus was probably the smallest target. He kept shouting his orders, and the Tyranids seemed to lose him in the forest of Ogrins and Terminators. Gallus would emerge with a hail of bolter rounds and a swift chain blade to the torso of whatever horror menaced him. New diabolical bioforms would emerge to come to the front and try to break the lines.
So one of the things that I found
shapes,
with this final
sizes, all bugs,
push, this final kind of
bad,
fight, is I didn't have a whole
smashed.
lot for Gallus to do. He
All
sort
the
of took a
fighting,
more
only
backseat
one of the Terminators
for
Og saw
for other
a
characters
flash
to do
of blue
things.
light,
Oh,
and he thought
but
he
I also
heard Sergeant
didn't really
Lazarus
mind
shout,
that
Diomedes!
that he was kind of.
The
I don't
Ogryn
know.
looked over to see a
Gallus'
Terminator
job
with
was sort
only
of to
one
give
arm
context
slashing through
to
several
things
dots
and
before a second blast of bioplasm struck him in the chest.
he kind
As
of
the
was the
fighting
person who
continued,
could
Og
who
felt
represented
something
the Ogrins and was
funny
kind
in
of the
his head.
brains of
An odd kind of
what
pressure.
was going on,
He
so
could
he could
feel
ask
ringing in his
questions
ears
and get
blood
information
began to drip from his nose.
that
air
Og
seemed
wouldn't
to
think to
press
ask, and
in
people wouldn't
expand,
necessarily
almost like someone
care
was
to
breathing.
explain to Og.
Like the walls of the
So it allowed
hallway
me to
were
get out some
expanding and compressing like enormous
information.
lungs.
But as far as like, I do
Feeling
kind of
seemed to
regret that there wasn't
shatter
as
a
much stuff for
powerful
Gallus
psychic
to do
blast tore
in this
through two
final
of the
fight.
Ogryn, flinging them like
Because he's kind of
ragdolls into
outclassed
the
by
air.
everyone else as far as
The
firepower
blast
and
seemed to be
destructive
absorbed by
capability.
one of the Terminators.
But, you know,
It
that's
seemed
okay.
to stagger the Lamenter, but he did not give up. The Crux Terminatus, the shard of the Emperor's armor that empowered each suit of Terminator armor, seemed to blunt the impact of the psychic blast. Damn!
zoanthropes, and something else. Get the Ogryns out from the front. We must withdraw. We need Sister Commander Abatisa. Behind the lines of Tyranids, great coiled worms floated above the swarm below them, crackling with psychic energy.
That's they're called
And in the center
zoanthropes.
of these creatures was something else. Something big, with a large, humped back lined with spines running down its center. Ogryns! Behind the Terminators! Fighting retreat! Og and Gallus began directing the Ogryns to leave the front line, fighting to the Terminators. Og was having to physically haul some
That was a
more
weird error.
enthusiastic brawlers behind the lines. Between the Bonehead and his commissar, they were able to pull the
There were a couple
Ogryns
audio
back,
issues, and I
much to
didn't
their
realize it
displeasure.
until later, and I
One of
basically
the
had to go back and
Zoanthropes'
like
heads
insert
exploded as the Death Watch Marine
weird
grinned
cuts.
and put another bolt round into the chamber. Before he could pull the trigger again, the Zoanthropes fired psychic blasts at the pillar he had positioned himself on top of. The Marine rolled clear
Whoa.
in time and gripped the pillar with
Whoa.
his feet and free hand as
Voldemort?
he slid down the pillar,
Is
sparks
here?
shooting from the ceramite as it scraped against stone. The line was moving back towards the sanctum portal.
Okay, I didn't
They could
expect
withstand the might
Voldemort
of the
himself to
swarm
be
for
here.
quite some time, but they could not hold off these psychic blasts like
Thank
that.
Thank you for coming and hanging out for our stream. I was like getting tired and confused. I did not expect you to stop on by.
Fell immediately as they were impaled by the lightning-fast lictors. Before
But
they
yes,
took
welcome.
one
Thank you.
step, the other scions opened fire and obliterated the Xenos. More
You
fell
were
on
the
the
inspiration for me to start
Another
my own
scion
channel.
speared and
So
Marcus
and
felt
for those of you
his
who
personal
did not
shield
know,
crackle as another
Voldemort
lick
also did
fell
some
on
voice
top of
work
him,
for me
threatening to pin him.
when I did my
Oryx managed to
10,000
keep Inferno
subscriber
free and fired a melted blast at
video.
point
So
blank
he
range
helped
of
me
the
out with
Defender.
that, and
The thing was incinerated, and the Inquisitor could feel the wave of heat.
yeah, we have.
rushing him. He quickly got to his feet. He could see
We've
more
exchanged
shapes
emails
scrambling
and
on the
spoken a
ceiling.
couple times, and
Scions
he,
began firing upwards
like I said,
as
gave me
fast
some
as
good
deadly
voice work.
assassins as quickly as they could. Torque slipped away and continued towards Shield Captain Actaeon and Sister Commander Abatisa. Line continued its retreat. The Lamenters remained.
I just assume most creators on here are busy
firing
writing their own stuff and recording things. That's what I feel like I'm always doing.
The Lamenters were more important than the lives of a few dozen nearly infinitely replaceable bioforms. The blasts would stagger the Terminators, knock them off their feet, and then it would be the Ogryns who would surge forward, eager to bash more of the bad bugs as the Lamenters regained their footing.
Oh yeah, 1 second.
With no psychic defense,
I got you.
the Ogryns would be blasted apart by the unyielding will of the hive mind. A few of the Zoanthropes were killed by bolter fire,
1 second.
sometimes overwhelming their psychic defensive barriers and causing their heads to rupture. The swarms
Yep, there's my email.
unlimited resources. They were so close to the Sanctum Porta now. Og brought his power maul
Oh, it's
down
good.
on the head of a
Well, yeah, if you got stuff for me to,
as a lamented
if you have a stuff you would like me to do, yeah, definitely.
As the Bonehead looked up, he could see the creature charging up to unleash another psychic bolt. The Eldritch
I would
energy
be happy to
poured
do some
forth
voice
and
work
braced
for
impact.
whatever you got in mind.
The blow never came.
The answer is yes. Before you give me something to do, the answer is yes.
turned to see that they had reached the narrow doorway leading into the place where the special thing was being kept. And there he saw the big shiny man and the small quiet woman. Og could feel his spirit rising as the Emperor's special helpers emerged to help fight the bad bugs. But this feeling was tempered by the low-level anxiety that seemed to follow the dangerous-looking Sister Commander Abatisa wherever she went. With the remaining Ogryns and Terminators protected from the blasts of psychic energy, everyone formed a line around the door. This protective bubble surrounding them, the fighting became fierce as the Tyranids desperately threw everything they had at the defenders. The big one in the back slowly began to move forward. It almost seemed like it crawled and slithered through the ranks of the other bioforms. Og was exhausted. One of the Tyranids charged him and mashed its armored frill into his face, cracking the
As
mask
far as
on
the
his
side
helmet
series
and
with the
bashing
Bullgrin
through
who
his
fell
mouth.
off, I didn't write it or record it. It was a fan project, and as far as I know, it isn't still going.
With his muscles aching, the knuckles on his good hands scraped and bleeding, his augmetic limbs were battered and scratched.
I might go look it up after we're done here and see if anything's still up. But last time I checked, it hadn't updated.
Ogryn had never
And
seen anything move as fast as these two. The Tyranids seemed like they were moving in slow motion as halberd and greatsword.
I haven't heard
sliced
much
through
from
endless
the
stream of
creator because
enemies.
he's one of my mods on my Discord.
Among the sea of hungry flesh
But I just
continuing
haven't heard
forward.
much from him
Tyranids seemed
either
to
place,
realize
so
that the Sister of
we'll see.
Silence was the source of the null shield surrounding the defenders. A blistering hail of biofire rained down on the shrinking Imperial forces, trying to target the nimble warrior. The Bullgrins had moved back to the front and locked their shields again. Many of the shields were already battered and damaged, and several of the slab shields were shattered and blown apart in the onslaught. Og couldn't see what happened to those Bullgrin afterwards. Even with
Sure.
the heavy armor,
Yeah, Baltimore, if you want to talk on Discord, we can do that. Do you have a
the custodies
Discord
and the Sister
name?
of Silence looked
I think I'm just
untouched
Nomad.
by the battle.
Or do you have your
Moving
own
in
Discord?
and out of the
You probably have a
enemy
Discord
formation,
link in your
leaving only death in their wake.
on your channel. I just need to follow
That
it.
was when it came. Rising out of the swarm, it came. It was gnarled and battered and bore many old scars and wounds. Og recognized it, and he could see the scars where the 3 lances had wounded it in the chest. He remembered the shiny men had come to save them before. This
Well,
was
I'm
the
glad you're
blood
able to stop by,
if
and
the
hopefully
Hive
this
Tyrant emerged from its
leads to a
lesser
nice
brethren
little
and
collaboration.
seemed to fill the entire high arching hallway. At its feet, tyrant guards gathered. The great creature hissed. Shield Captain Actaeon waved back to Sister Abatisa.
We
Sure,
can't
no problem.
risk you. Move back into the sanctum. If you die, there's no seal on that portal.
The Sister Commander adamantly shook her head and raised her sword to defend herself against the great
I know, Baltimore.
monster in its hulking
You keep
wreck.
apologizing. People might think that you're not English. They might suspect that you're Canadian.
Og, Gallus, Actaeon,
I have cousins who are
and the
Canadian.
Death
I
Watch
can make fun of
stood
Canada.
against the horror. The fight began and everything was a blur. Og had barely taken a step forward when one of the great blades of the beast slashed him ferociously across the chest, piercing through his armor and biting deeply into his skin.
Oh, I'm
Grunted, he
excited.
fell to one knee, using what was left of his slab shield to hold himself up. The tyrant
Whatever you got in
was
mind for
on
me.
him in a moment, and Og was back on his heels, dealing with these bruising, heavy creatures. The Hive Tyrant kept slithering from one opponent to the next, throwing in a slash here and there, whipping his great tail around to trip or bash one of his opponents. It was like a game of chess played in milliseconds. Occupy all of the enemies, and single out his true target, Abatisa. The nimble Sister of Silence dodged this way and that, evading, parrying, every blade, every moment. But the floor...
Oh,
was
the English are
slick
worse
with
about
blood.
apologizing?
To Og's eye, there was no slip, not even a hesitation, but the tiniest moment where she was off balance.
I don't think we Americans are well known for our apologies.
Wily and extremely well equipped.
I don't know if that's well deserved, though.
But he still was only a man. He parried the first strike, but the next 3 saw the blades of the Hive Tyrant painted with the Inquisitor's blood. Inquisitor Torix fell.
Make a video of
roared
Og
and went
talking to
into
a Terminator?
berserk rage. He slammed his shield into the tyrant god next to him and began relentlessly beating against it with his power maul. Shield Captain Actaeon was wading through enemies trying to reach Abatisa, but for those moments she stood alone.
Sure thing,
In
Baltimore.
Og's
I will get in
rage,
contact
seemed
with
to
you.
slow down. He was suddenly very aware of
I was
his
confused about piloting, but
He
polite.
saw out of the corner of his eye the special thing through the doorway. It looked like a big circle of swirling light and color. Colors that Og had never seen before.
I'm going to let this just run
Couldn't
so we can
let
get to the
bad
end of this.
bugs get to that special thing no matter what.
How much time?
He had to get to the quiet lady, but he felt like he was moving in slow motion.
I know we still have more time.
He had to get there
I can still
before it
talk.
was too late. Abatisa dodged one blade, parried another, slashed at a third limb, severing it. She dodged a blade coming at her from one of the tyrant's guards that moved on her, and ducked just below its strike. But in that moment, Og saw the great blade of the beast slam down on her, and the Sister of Silence was pierced through her chest. Abatisa grimaced, and stabbed forward into the gut of the creature that had skewered her. The next moment saw the tyrant pull Abatisa apart. Og roared and charged forward. He recklessly threw his power maul and struck the creature's chitinous hide,
All right.
cracking it deeply,
Have a good night.
causing ichor to burst from its wound. But Og didn't
Fairly well.
strike. But there was an
Thank you for the
impact
words
on
of
his
encouragement.
slab shield that sent him sprawling. His augmetic arm shattered. All around him, the other Bulgarians and the Lamenters desperately fought to keep the flood back.
As far as
It just
American
seemed like
reputation
it would not
goes,
end.
yeah, I don't think a
Og
lot of us
landed,
travel,
grunted,
but
and
I also
turned his
think
head to
that
the side. He could see the shiny special thing again. As Og
we live in a
struggled to
big
get
country,
his
and
feet,
it is often
the
hard
circle
for people
began
to move from
glow
where they
brightly.
are to a different country.
Shield Captain Actaeon's shoulders sagged.
I don't know. I know we have a bad
For a
reputation
moment,
for
the
being
dauntless
tourists,
shield
but
captain,
I don't know how
handcrafted by
accurate
the
it is.
Emperor himself,
I think I'm a pretty
looked
good tourist.
defeated. He quickly rallied himself.
Brothers, whatever warp spawn comes out of that portal, we will stand and we will die fighting.
For the Emperor!
Suddenly, there was a blinding flash from the portal. The simple Ogryn bonehead couldn't make any sense of what he was seeing. Og shielded his eyes as a great figure came into view. It bore the wings of an angel, and it seemed to hover in front of the portal for a moment, before hurtling towards the melee. It burned with a relentless fire. Og wasn't sure what was going on, but he felt his body reinvigorated. He leapt to his feet, picked up his power maul with his good arm from his fallen Ogryns, and followed this mysterious winged being. Its voice echoed through the halls and fired the hearts of the remaining defenders.
Rise, my sons. Rise up and drive back the nightmare. You are not forgotten. The Emperor has not forgotten you. And I have not forgotten you.
Sergeant Lazarus stood and regarded the figure with awe.
Father! Father, do you live? Are we forgiven?
The golden shining figure only smiled before drawing its mighty flaming sword to lead the great charge. Og wasn't sure what happened after that. He remembered standing. He remembered feeling like all of his tired had gone away. He remembered running and swinging his power maul. He remembered crushing the bad bugs. He did not know how long he ran. He did not know how long they fought. The next thing he remembered, he was lying face first on the cold floor. He ached all over and had dried blood on his face and chest. Commissar Gallus was there, along with Lazarus, Actaeon, and a handful of other Lamenters and Ogryns. Of the original 20, there were maybe 7, if Og could count that high. Gallus collapsed against the wall, caked with blood and ichor as well.
Did we win?
The Commissar looked down the hallway strewn with the corpses of the Tyranids. Many had been seared to charcoal by the holy light of the angel. Gallus slowly nodded his head. Yes, Og? By the Emperor's grace, I think we've won. I think it's over.
Good. I'm really hungry.
Okay. That's everything.
No man did they call me. My mother and my father.
Let's see. I'm just going to pull this up so I can have something for you guys to look at. But that's all of the original series. That's all of Og the Ogryn. I don't think I have too many final thoughts on it. I did very much like the end. I liked the appearance of the angel. I also liked the final line, like the last little exchange that Og and Gallus have. I find it very entertaining, and you have this kind of big, grand, crazy moment, and I think it's kind of a nice bring you back into to ground you almost. Bring you back to good old simple Og. And I think it's also a really nice exchange between Og and Gallus. So, I enjoyed that. And I hope that you guys had fun. I think it was pretty cool for Voldemort to stop on by. It was really neat of him to do so. And hopefully that means that we will be collaborating at some point. If he's got stuff for me to do. I am more than happy to hit him up and see what he's interested in. I'll probably email him once I'm off of here. But, yep, went for 3 hours and 40 minutes. And every time I have one of these streams that's just like a little bit longer than normal, I feel so exhausted. I have no idea how people stream for like a really, really long time. I still have no idea how people do it. But thank you, Eric, for being my impromptu moderator. I want to thank Lorenzo for his donation. I want to thank everybody who donated. I want to thank Crazy Potato for their donation as well. And then there was one more. Finlander. Thank you all for the donations. I hope everyone had fun kind of re-listening to Og the Ogryn and also hearing my my commentary on it. Long streams better than short streams. I feel like I stop streaming if I feel like my quality of content is going down, and I just feel when I get tired, my brain isn't working as well, and I'm just not giving you guys my best. Some people get funny when they're tired, like they get kind of weird and pathetic and they say weird things, and that's kind of funny. I don't. I just start like mumbling and getting confused. I don't think I'm very entertaining when I've gone for a really long time and am not talking coherently. But we got 13 viewers. It's been kind of what it's been for the whole time. Not as much action as other streams, but I wanted to try this one out and see how people liked it. And tried something different thing to try. But yep, we killed 2 whole bots. We have defeated multiple abominable intelligences. And thank you all for hanging out and having a good time. And I will be back with more stuff. Hopefully next week I will be more able to produce long form content instead of like really short stuff. But thank you all very much.